Chapter 556. Ning Kei's face was slightly cold. When he woke up, he found that there was something wrong with his mental state. Because of Song Song's illness, he had been worried for many days. He had become a little anxious and even violent. In the autumn rain at the Red Lotus Temple, when he bit off the flesh from Long Qing's neck, he had felt that violent and terrifying state of mind. He knew that if he was really controlled by this kind of emotion, he would fall into the abyss and never come back. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and let the cool autumn wind moisten his slightly dry lungs. The Great Spirit then nourished his whole body and suppressed the dangerous violent impulse in his state of mind. He decided not to cause any trouble before Master Qishan treated Sang Sang. As for the warning sign that the Buddhist chariot had triggered in his heart, Ning Kei thought that he had just entered the knowing destiny state. Perhaps it was just an illusion caused by his anxiety, or perhaps he hoped that it was just an illusion. He put down his arm, and the sharp arrowhead was no longer pointed at the Buddhist chariot. Then he slowly released the bowstring, accompanied by a slight sound of microstructure movement. It was no longer as frightening as if it was about to collapse a cliff. Along with this action, countless sighs of relief and exhalation rose from the stone plateau next to the stream. Previously, countless cultivators had been struggling to control their breathing and were extremely nervous. Ning Kei looked at the slightly wet ground where the iron arrow was pointing and said, "As long as you don't stop me from going up the mountain to visit Master Qishan, I can actually show enough respect to the Xiankong Temple and the Buddhism sect, even if it's fake." Monk Guan Hai smiled bitterly. He thought that since the deadlock had finally been resolved, why did he have to say such words? He comforted him and said, "Although my master rarely sees guests, since he has come out of seclusion, there is no reason not to see Senior Brother 13. At this moment, the yellow-robed old monk beside the stone table and chessboard said sternly, "Reason is the rule. Guan Hai, although you are the successor of Senior Brother Qishan, you have no right to disobey the rules of the Hua Mountain." Monk Guan Hai was speechless for a moment. He thought to himself, rules are made by people after all. Mr. 13 of the Academy and the Lady of Light in the horse carriage are of high status. Do they really have to win 3 rounds in a row? The yellow-garbed old monk looked at Ning Kei and said in a cold voice, "The Academy is indeed powerful. Just an iron arrow, and you have forced the Vedanta of the Buddhism sect to retreat without a fight. However, as I said earlier, Koharan was able to charge into the Hua Mountain with a steel sword at his waist. I admit that he has the power to break the rules of the Hua Mountain. If you want to break the rules, you have to show it to me. I want to see if the person from the Academy who has entered the human realm is still as cold-blooded and ruthless as his predecessors, killing without batting an eye." Ning Kei was sure that the old monk living in seclusion in the Lank Temple had an old grudge against youngest uncle. However, looking at the old monk's cultivation state, youngest uncle had not paid attention to this person when he had charged into the Hua Mountain. He could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. He thought that it was not a good thing for the elders in the sect to be too domineering back then. In the end, the old business would fall on the younger generation. He gently plucked the bowstring, which made a clear sound. He silently thought that he would eventually have to follow in youngest uncle's footstep. Just as Ning Kei was in a dilemma, Song Song's hesitant and unconfident voice came from the black horse carriage. "Young master, why don't you let me try?" Ning Kei knew that she was worried about him, and did not want him to have another conflict with the Buddhism sect. He smiled and said, "You don't know how to play chess. Besides, it is too tiring and not good for your health." Song Song's voice came through the window and sounded again. "Young master, I know how to play chess, and I think it is very interesting. I don't think it will tire my brain." Hearing Song Song's words, Ning Kei suddenly remembered the scene of gambling in the wine shops in the city of Wei. He also remembered the earnest instructions of his 2 senior brothers before he left the academy. He could not help but feel moved. After that, He laughed in self-ridicule as he thought to himself that he was really thinking too much. The Lank Temple was famous for its chess skills. The legendary 3 games of chess were naturally extremely difficult. The previous player from the South Jin Kingdom had thought hard for a long time and could not make a move. Even if Sang Sang had some skills in chess, how could she break the game? He shook his head and said, "The autumn wind is bone-chilling. Don't come out." If it was in the past, Sang Sang would not argue with him in front of outsiders. However, for some reason, she seemed a little stubborn today. She said, "I will watch from the carriage. Miss Shanshan, please help me set the chess pieces." Ning Kai did not know what had happened in the carriage. Hearing Song Song's address from Hill Master to Calligraphy Addict, and then to Shanshan, he could not help but guess. Since Sang Sang had said this, she must have gotten Mo Shanshan's approval. So he really did not know how to reject her this time. He said, "Then let's try." Then he added, "If you feel tired, don't play. We will try again." Hearing this, Monk Guan Hai smiled bitterly. The Lank Temple's abbot looked dissatisfied, but he did not dare to say anything. The yellow-robed old monk by the stone table sat back on the stone bench with an indifferent expression. The sound of horse hooves could be heard, and the steel wheels rolled on the stone ground. The black horse carriage left the stone bridge over the jumping tiger stream silently and stopped near the stone table under the big green tree. There were dozens of vertical and horizontal lines carved on the stone table, forming a natural chessboard. The lines were deeply embedded into the stone, but they were exceptionally smooth. They must have been caused by the frequent brushing of the chess players. The dense branches and leaves of the big green tree covered the autumn sun above the Hua Mountain. There were hundreds of chess pieces on the chessboard. They did not move in the wind and shadows of the trees. They seemed scattered, but there was a hidden meaning in them. The white-haired South Jin Kingdom player had been frowning and thinking for a long time by the stone table. He held a white chess piece in his hand, but he did not put it down. Looking at the situation on the chessboard, he had not made the first move. If one was deep in the art of chess, he would naturally wander among the lines and forget everything in the world. The South Jin Kingdom chess master was thinking hard about how to solve the game and did not know what had happened by the stream. He did not even notice the arrival of Ning Kai and the high monk from the Xiankong temple. Since the black horse carriage had arrived, there was no seat for the South Jin Kingdom chess master beside the chessboard. An official from the South Jin Kingdom came forward and asked him to leave the stone bench. The South Jin Kingdom chess master felt that he had seen a glimmer of hope. He was suddenly disturbed and became furious. He pointed at the official and cursed in grief and indignation. The autumn wind lifted the curtain and Mo Shanshan, who was wearing a white dress, got out of the horse carriage. She came to the stone table and bowed to the yellow-garbed old monk. Then she sat on the stone bench and said, "Can I play chess for Miss Sang Sang?" The yellow-garbed old monk did not say anything and accepted the invitation. A corner of the curtain of the horse carriage was lifted, revealing Song Song's little face. She looked at the seemingly scattered chess pieces on the stone table, and her eyes gradually brightened. The black horse carriage stopped beside the big green tree. Song Song's window faced the mountain stream, so the cultivators on the stone platform could not see her. Only the yellow-garbed old monk could. The yellow-garbed old monk was shocked to see Song Song's slightly tanned but pale and haggard face. He did not expect the legendary Lady of Light to be such an ordinary little girl. Sang Sang did not like the yellow-garbed old monk because of his unkind words to Ning Kai earlier. She did not look at the old monk's face for even a moment and just quietly looked at the stone chessboard. For some reason, Song Song's eyes became brighter and brighter. Then she cautiously asked in a low voice, "What's the prize for this game?" When Song Song's eyes became brighter and brighter, Ning Kai knew that there must be a problem. Because in the past years, her eyes would only become this bright when she looked at silver. But he still did not expect Sang Sang to ask such a question. The expression on his face suddenly became extremely interesting. The calligraphy addict did not expect Sang Sang to ask if there was a prize for this game either. She could not help but be stunned and speechless. Of course, the yellow-garbed old monk was the most shocked. Decades ago, he had been in charge of the 3 games of chess on Wa Mountain and had seen many amazing players. But this was the first time he had heard someone ask what the prize was. This was a game of chess that had condensed the wisdom of the high monks of Lank Temple. This was a solemn test to meet Elder Chishan. But in the eyes of this little girl, it was no different from gambling in those shabby gambling stalls. The yellow-garbed old monk was slightly shocked and suddenly felt endless anger. He thought that even if this little girl was the Lady of Light from the West Hill Divine Palace, how could she humiliate the Lank Temple like this? His face was as cold as ice, and he did not answer Sang Sang's question. Sang Sang looked at the expressions on Ning Ke and Emo Shanshan's faces. She looked at the yellow-garbed old monk, who looked as if he had lost his parents. She knew that her question was indeed inappropriate and could not help but feel a little ashamed. The cultivators all returned to the big green tree and excitedly prepared to watch the game of chess. They naturally did not dare to get too close to the stone chessboard, but they were all in a high state and could clearly see what was happening on the chessboard. Even though they could not see the true face of the Lady of Light from where they stood, they were still very excited to be able to witness the Lady of Light's first move in the human world, even if it was just a chess piece. Naturally, not everyone present was interested in this game of chess. At least the high monk of Xiankong Temple in the Buddhist chariot would not watch his little handmaiden play chess after being humiliated by Ning Quebec. The Buddhist chariot moved slightly. Cuny Mati led the sadhus of Yueluan Kingdom. Under the guidance of the abbot of Lank Temple, they passed by the stone table and walked towards the stone bridge over jumping Tiger Stream. Ning Ke turned and happened to meet the eyes of the flower addict, Lu Chenjia. Lu Chenjia's eyes were very calm, so calm that it was a little abnormal. It was like the snow on the meadow in the wilderness, cold even though it was about to die. Even Ning Ke, who was used to seeing life and death, felt a strong chill from her eyes. He did not look at her anymore. He looked at the Buddhist chariot and said, "Stop." The Buddhist chariot stopped. Ning Ke asked, "Why can't I cross, but the master on the chariot can?" He was naturally asking the old monk in yellow beside the chessboard. The old monk in yellow frowned and said, "These guests are fellow Buddhists, why can't they cross? If the disciples of the Buddhism sect can cross, why can't I?" Princess Chenjia believed in Buddhism when she was young, but she later entered the Revelation Institute to cultivate and worship Haotian. Does she count as a fellow Buddhist? Ning Ke turned to look at the old monk in yellow and said, "You said that the rules are alive. Is this what you meant? I have never heard of such a shameless rule in my life. The Academy does not accept this rule either." Then he continued, "If the rules must be followed, then everyone should follow them. I don't care about the monks in Lank Temple, but as long as they are from other temples, be it White Tower Temple or Xiankong Temple, they cannot cross before we cross the bridge." There was dead silence again. Cuny Mati looked at Ning Ke with hatred. Ning Ke acted as if he did not see it and only looked at the Buddhist chariot. Although he no longer tried to kill the high monk from Xiankong Temple, he was still vigilant. Instead of letting the monk go up the mountain first, it was better to let the monk stay in his sight so that he could deal with it. The monk in the curtain waved his hand and the Buddhist chariot descended. Ning Ke frowned slightly. At this moment, the South Jin chess master's shocked shout rang out beside the stone chessboard. This cry contained extremely complicated emotions: shock, anger, and finally, regret. It was just like when the headmaster of academy saw a country cook in the mountains north of Yen Kingdom who dared to serve a bear paw to the guests in only 6 hours. It was also like when Ning Ke saw his companion chop off a horse gang's head with 3 blades by the Shubi Lake. Moreover, the head was badly mutilated and could not be exchanged for military merit. How can it be here? Little girl, do you even know how to play chess? Sorry, it was difficult to write. I was too engrossed in it and forgot the time. It's a little late. Please forgive me for the wordy title of the chapter. There will definitely be a third chapter, but I dare not say when. See you later. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 557. There was a beautiful legend. This legend had nothing to do with the stone. It was said that thousands of years ago, in the early years of Daji in the West Hill Divine Palace, when the Tile Mountain was still called Steamed Bun Mountain, a woodcutter named Wang Ji entered the mountain by mistake to cut firewood. He saw a few old monks playing chess, and went up to watch out of curiosity. He found that the chessboard was extremely fierce, so he forgot to leave. An old monk saw his drunken look, and handed him a steamed bun. Strangely enough, after eating the steamed bun, Wang Ji no longer felt hungry. He sat by the chessboard from dawn to dusk. Dusk gradually enveloped the deep mountains, but the game of chess under the tree was not over yet. The old monk who had given him food earlier raised his head and looked at Wang Ji, saying, "If you don't leave now, you won't be able to." Wang Ji stood up reluctantly and was ready to leave. However, when he picked up the axe he used to cut firewood, he was shocked to find that the wooden handle of the axe had rotted into dust. When he walked out of the mountains and returned to his hometown, he found that all his peers had died. Only then did he realize that a day of watching chess under the tree was equivalent to 100 years in the human world. This legend spread far and wide. Later, Steamed Bun Mountain became Tile Mountain, and the old temple in the mountain was called Lank Temple because of this legend. It gradually became an official temple name. Because of this legend, chess was very popular around Tile Mountain. Both gentry and farmers learned chess from childhood. The black and white flags that Ning Ke saw in the small town in front of the mountain were closely related to this custom. The Lank Temple was named for this reason. The monks in the temple were naturally good at chess. Today, the game on the stone chessboard under the big tree was a method used by the Lank Temple to choose the fated one. It was obvious that it was extremely difficult. Therefore, Ning Ke did not expect that Sang Sang could solve this game. However, he did not expect that Sang Sang would make a big mistake with the first move, which caused the South Jin Kingdom chess master to shout angrily. The South Jin Kingdom chess master shouted loudly, and his attitude was terrible. The cultivators who were watching the game glared at him, thinking that he should be locked up in the U prison for 100 years for being so disrespectful to the Lady of Light. The cultivator's gaze did not affect the South Jin Kingdom chess master at all. He broke free from his companion's arm and rushed to the stone table. He yelled with endless regret and anger, "Even though this game can be solved, it took me an hour to figure it out. You little girl, how could you make a random move without thinking? What a mess. Do you even know how to play chess? If you don't know how to do it, what are you doing?" Emo Shanshan, who was sitting by the stone table, raised her head and looked at this person. Because her eyesight was not very good, she seemed somewhat perplexed. She said, "I really am not good at chess. What's the matter?" The chess master of South Jin Kingdom came to his senses and turned to look at the black horse carriage. He pointed at the white chess piece on the stone chessboard with his left hand and said angrily, "You Tangs are all straightforward people. You don't know the art of moving in a small space. You little girl, you don't even know how to play chess, so why are you randomly placing your pieces? You will die if you make a move." Watching this person shouting at the black carriage, the cultivators who were watching the chess game around the green tree did not even bother to be angry. They were sure that this person was an idiot who was not afraid of death. Since it was a chess game played by the Son of Light, even if it was wrong, it must be wrong. How could an ordinary person like him understand it? The chess master of South Jin Kingdom had been obsessed with chess all his life. He left the chess room and went to the palace. Even when he was playing against the Emperor of South Jin Kingdom, he did not know what it meant to let go. He was really obsessed with chess. He did not know the status of the little girl in the black horse carriage in the cultivation world. As the saying goes, ignorant people are fearless. He still angrily scolded the chess master. Ning Ke shook his head and gestured to the disciples of the sword Garrett not to be nervous. Anyway, he did not think that Sang Sang could really solve the game. He only warned the chess master of South Jin Kingdom, "Keep your voice down. Don't swear." The chess master of South Jin Kingdom was startled. He recognized him as the young man he met in the Lank Temple yesterday morning. He unnaturally lowered his voice and said angrily, "Playing chess is an elegant thing. Why would I swear? Let's not talk about the disturbance on the chessboard." The yellow-clothed old monk sat opposite the chessboard, his expression calm and indifferent. He had been studying chess for his entire life, especially the game under the tree. He had thought about it for many years and repeated the game more than 1,000 times. At this moment, looking at the new white chess piece on the chessboard, he was sure that the white chess piece had fallen into an irreversible dead end because of this move, just like the chess master of South Jin Kingdom. This game was called Luanka after the messy pile of firewood. When there was no external force, the messy pile of firewood seemed stable, but in fact it was on the verge of collapsing. To solve this game, one had to rearrange the order of the firewood in the pile while ensuring that it did not collapse. One could imagine the difficulty of this. Earlier, Sang Sang had whispered the position in the carriage window, and the calligraphy addict had placed her chess piece according to her words. The white chess piece went straight to the empty space at the bottom of the complicated game. It was as if someone had unreasonably reached out and pulled out the thickest firewood from the bottom of the pile. It looked tough, but in fact it had completely destroyed the barely stable state of balance of the pile of firewood. The pile of firewood had collapsed on the ground. The old monk in yellow said, "This game is over." Since the cultivators who had come to visit Master Chishan wanted to see him, they were naturally very confident in chess, or they had brought companions who were good at it. When they heard this, they carefully examined the situation on the chessboard and could not help but realize that the chess master of South Jin Kingdom was right. The white chess piece could no longer be saved. When they thought of how the Lady of Light's first move had ended so hastily, they looked at the black horse carriage with complicated gazes. However, they still did not dare to show any doubt or disrespect. It was quiet by the mountain stream, and the atmosphere became a little awkward. However, at this moment, Sang Sang's voice came from the black horse carriage again. "This game is really interesting." The curtains moved slightly, and Sang Sang whispered 2 numbers. Just like every time before Ning Ke shot an arrow, she would say 2 numbers, as if she did not even need to think. Emo Shanshan, who was sitting in front of the chessboard, was slightly startled. She took out a white chess piece from the urn and placed it somewhere on the chessboard. The old monk in yellow frowned slightly. He did not expect that the Lady of Light in the black horse carriage would still insist when the white chess piece was bound to lose. To him, this was not the style of a chess player. The chess master from South Jin Kingdom seemed to have discovered something. He moved closer to the chessboard and stared at the seemingly ordinary white chess piece, as if he had seen something strange. He said with a slightly strange expression, "This seems interesting." The old monk in yellow also discovered the strange position of the white chess piece, and could not help but think of the past. His cold expression gradually became warm, and he said with a smile, "Interesting. Sang Sang was a very smart girl. In Ning Ke's words, she was just too lazy to think about things and was used to relying on her body. That was why she seemed a little dull, even when she was chopping firewood. Since she was born to be too lazy to think, when did she start to feel that playing chess was interesting? It all started from 2 years ago. At that time, Ning Ke was far away in the wilderness, and Chen Pippi often went to the old brush pen shop on Lin 47th Street to take care of Sang Sang. Chen Pippi had heard from Ning Ke that Sang Sang was the real genius. How could he be convinced? Thus, he started several competitions that no one knew about. At the beginning, Chun Pippi competed with Sang Sang in memory, and he lost. Then he played chess with Sang Sang, but the old man Wei Guangming went back to the old brush pen shop, and Master Yen Sei came again. After that, the story that made people sigh with emotion happened. But that was the first time Sang Sang played chess. She learned the rules on the chessboard from that day onward. Since then, Chun Pippi had never beaten her again. Sang Sang and Chun Pippi had a bet when they played chess. Every time Sang Sang won a game, she would get some benefit. Therefore, she began to feel that playing chess was a very interesting thing. This was also the reason why she had carefully asked the yellow-clothed old monk about the stakes of this game of chess. As the saying goes, habit makes nature. After that, Sang Sang cooked for Ning Kei in the back mountain of the academy. When she was cooking for the headmaster of the academy and other senior brothers and sisters, she would occasionally meet fifth brother and eighth brother, who were crazy about chess, and she was dragged to play dozens of games. On the journey to the Lank Temple, when she was sick, she would spend time with the chess manuals given by the two senior brothers. Fifth brother of the academy once said that Sang Sang's talent in chess was far better than Ning Kei's. But she did not know how talented she was, and how good she was at chess. But she found chess more and more interesting. Even if it was a pity that there was no bet, it was still very interesting. Under the big green tree, the chess master of South Jin Kingdom shook his head regretfully and said, "Although it is interesting, it is still not possible." The endgame was called Lank. Sang Sang placed the second piece, corresponding to the first piece. Instead of pulling out the thickest piece of firewood from the pile, she used that piece of firewood to scatter all the firewood on top of it. This was not pulling the firewood from under the pot, but it was more like pulling the firewood from under the pot. She completely messed up the chess position and then found another way. This method of rebuilding after total destruction seemed to be a feasible method. It was in line with the profits and losses of Haotian Taoism and had the courage to survive in the face of death. However, in this game the black chess had the upper hand. It was so strong that it could directly crush the white chess. How could it withstand the opponent's attack even if the chess position was messed up? More importantly, even if the white chess could withstand the attack of the black chess, how could it rebuild its chess position? The yellow-clothed monk did not say anything. Although he also felt that the white chess was interesting, he was sure that the white chess could not walk out of the dead end the moment he saw it. The white chess pieces were scattered all over the board, like firewood scattered on the ground. It was absolutely chaotic and disorderly. To regroup it into an orderly state required a huge amount of calculation. The amount of calculation was not something that humans could do. Even the great divine priest of revelation of the West Hill Divine Palace, who was famous for his mathematics, could not do it. This had nothing to do with intelligence or talent in chess. It was the rule of the world itself. That rule was that human strength was limited. No matter how smart or talented a person was, there was still a limit to what their mind could hold. Decades ago, the yellow-clothed monk had tried this method. He did not sleep and thought hard for 3 whole months, but he still could not complete the calculation. He did not even see the dawn of success. It was then that he realized that this solution seemed reasonable, but in fact it did not make sense at all. Because this was not a solution that humans could complete, unless the person playing chess could ignore the rules of the world. It was extremely quiet under the big green tree. Only the crisp sound of chess pieces landing on the stone chessboard could be heard. In the black horse carriage, Sang Sang said softly and a white chess piece landed. There were already 7 or 8 white chess pieces on the chessboard. The yellow-clothed monk compared it with his memory, and was surprised to find that the solution of the little girl in the horse carriage was very similar to the solution that he had figured out after months of hard thinking. Although the positions of 2 chess pieces were a little wrong, they were indeed walking on the right path. Unfortunately, this seemingly correct path was still blocked by the road ahead. Thinking that the little girl could do this in such a short time, the yellow-clothed monk could not help but nod slowly. The expression on his face grew warmer, and he thought that she was indeed the Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace. She was indeed extremely intelligent. The Lank Temple did not need the person who was qualified to meet Master Chishan to solve the 3 chess games. That was because the 3 games on the mountain path were extremely difficult. Even the world's top players might not be able to do it, let alone the cultivators who were not good at chess. The 3 games on the mountain path were a test of the wisdom and courage that the cultivator could show in solving the remaining games, as well as other precious qualities. As long as they were outstanding, they could still pass. The yellow-clothed monk knew that the white chess pieces were still on the road to death. However, the courage that the little girl in the horse carriage had shown when solving the game, especially her extraordinary mental arithmetic, was already outstanding enough. She could even be called a genius. Since Sang Sang was a distinguished bigwig in the West Hill Divine Palace, the old monk would naturally not let her continue on the wrong path until it was dark and hopeless. If the Lady of Light lost too badly, it would be too disrespectful to Haotian Taoism. The yellow-clothed old monk stood up and looked at the black horse carriage with a gentle expression. "You are indeed the Lady of Light, with unparalleled intelligence. Although this solution still doesn't work, you can pass this one of the 3 rounds on the mountain path." Then he looked at Ning Kei and said, "Mr. 13, you were wrong just now. In fact, the rules of the Lank Temple are not necessarily rigid. I think some of them should be respected." Although Ning Kei did not necessarily agree with the old monk, he was satisfied since he had agreed to let him cross the stream and praised Sang Sang. He nodded slightly to the old monk. The chess master from South Jin Kingdom, who had been watching the game by the chessboard, stroked his beard and praised, "Master, you are right. Although the little girl's solution has not really understood the mystery of chess, her ability to calculate really makes me feel a little ashamed." The cultivators were very satisfied with the result and nodded repeatedly in praise. It was unknown whether they had really seen the intelligence of the Lady of Light from the situation on the chessboard. Some people were satisfied, and naturally some were not. Aunt Cuny Matty was very dissatisfied and snorted coldly with some disappointment. There was another person who was not satisfied. Song Song's puzzled voice came from the black horse carriage. "I'm going to win, why did I stop?" Chapter 3, 4,000 words have been delivered. I'm going to sleep. Please vote for me. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for me and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 558. The cultivators watching the game were in an uproar. They were puzzled. By now, they could tell that Bai Qi had no chance of winning based on his current solution. The yellow-garbed old monk's decision to stop the game and let the black horse carriage cross the stream and go up the mountain was a very kind gesture. Why did Sang Sang not seem to accept it? Did the Lady of Light really think that she could solve the game? The yellow-garbed old monk was even more shocked. He looked at the black horse carriage and frowned. He admired Song Song's courage and wisdom, but it did not mean that she could solve the game. However, he did not expect that Sang Sang did not want to accept his kindness. To him, even if she was the noble Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace, it was still an extremely rude move. The old monk was a reclusive elder of the Lank Temple. Since he felt that the other party was rude, he could not help but feel annoyed. He sat down beside the stone chessboard with a cold expression. He picked up a black chess piece from the urn and placed it on the chessboard. The South Jin Kingdom chess master did not expect Sang Sang to reject the suggestion of the Lank Temple to stop the game. He could not help but shake his head and sigh. "Do you really think that you can win?" Sang Sang lifted a corner of the carriage curtain and looked at the new black chess piece on the chessboard. She found that the black chess piece looked very beautiful under the sunlight from the green trees. She smiled and told them the location. Mo Shanshan picked up a white chess piece and gently placed it on the chessboard, sticking it to the side of the black chess piece. The white chess piece shone brighter and brighter, as if it was about to melt the black chess piece. The yellow-garbed old monk was a little annoyed. However, when he saw the position of the white chess piece, he felt his expression tremble for no reason. He suddenly realized that the white chess piece's movement was completely different from the one he had painstakingly studied in the past. The scattered arrows formed by the white chess pieces on the chessboard seemed to be heading to another world. He did not expect this white chess piece, so he was silent for a while before he made his own move. Just as his old fingers left the surface of the black chess piece, Song Song's soft voice sounded again. It seemed that there was no pause in the middle. Another white chess piece fell on the chessboard. The yellow-garbed old monk's silver-white eyebrows slowly floated in the autumn wind. He looked at the mottled black and white pieces on the chessboard that were entangled and clashing with each other. Suddenly, an extremely strong sense of vigilance rose in him. The chess master from the South Jin Kingdom exclaimed again. He stood by the chessboard and looked at it very carefully. Song Song's voice kept coming from the black carriage. Mo Shanshan kept taking out white chess pieces from the urn and calmly placed them on the stone chessboard. The yellow-clothed old monk's eyebrows rose more and more frequently. On his old face, the expression of caution, deep thought, and surprise kept changing, as if he was seeing something impossible. The frequency of the South Jin Kingdom Go Master's exclamation became more frequent. He leaned lower and lower off the table, and his eyes opened wider and wider, as if he had seen the white chess pieces come to life. Song Song's voice continued to ring out under the green tree. Another 4 or 5 chess pieces were placed on the stone chessboard. The yellow-clothed old monk's expression became unprecedentedly serious. His trembling robes revealed just how nervous he was. A few beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on his forehead. There really are piles of Luan Ku. How is this possible? Is there really someone in the world who can calculate it? The yellow-clothed old monk looked at the mess in front of him and mumbled to himself in an extremely dry voice. His body also seemed to become stiff. He reached into the urn and fumbled for a long time before taking out a black chess piece. How is it possible that someone can calculate it? Every step the white chess piece took was like walking on a single log bridge. A slight miscalculation would result in the tragic end of falling into the abyss. Moreover, every chess piece placed was equivalent to taking an additional step on the bridge, increasing the danger by a fraction and increasing the difficulty of the calculations by a fraction. I have killed countless people on the chessboard in my life, and only then do I understand that man proposes, God disposes. No matter how amazing this little girl's calculation is, can she really go against the natural order? The South Jin Kingdom Go Master stared at the chessboard with his round eyes. He waved his right hand and said in a hoarse voice. No one knew if he was trying to help the yellow-clothed old monk calm down, or if he was trying to release the shock and anxiety in his heart. He took out a few smooth chess pieces from the urn and kept fiddling with them in his slightly trembling right hand, trying to calm himself down. He said in a trembling voice, "Impossible, this is impossible." The Luan Ku game was unfathomable. It was not until then that the cultivators who were watching realized that the game seemed to have changed a lot. Those who still could not understand vaguely guessed that the white chess pieces had changed a lot when they saw the sweat on the yellow-clothed old monk's forehead and the South Jin Kingdom Go Master's crazy look. Song Song's voice was still ringing. She seemed a little tired, but still childish and accurate. What was more shocking was that there was no pause in the middle, as if she did not need to think at all. The yellow-clothed old monk Ingzi's speed was getting slower and slower. He had to think carefully for a long time before carefully placing a black chess piece. His yellow monk robe was already soaked with sweat. There were more and more chess pieces on the stone chessboard. The black and white colors silently fought and devoured each other in the mountain and autumn light, like night and day blending and separating in the morning and dusk. It was quiet. Only the crisp sound of chess pieces falling on the chessboard, the rustling of the green trees in the autumn wind, and the sound of the autumn water flowing in the deep mountain stream could be heard. As time passed, the morning light had already left the Wa mountain. The autumn sun was about to rise and the game was also coming to an end. The yellow-clothed old monk's right hand trembled slightly in the autumn wind. He held a black chess piece between his fingers. He looked at the stone table in front of him and could not place it, because he did not know where to place it. The South Jin Kingdom Go Master's eyes were dry and bloodshot for a long time. He did not know when he had ground the chess piece in his right hand into sharp gravel and cut his palm. Blood dripped down his clenched right hand and fell on a green leaf on the ground, but he did not know it. He suddenly came to his senses and looked up at the black horse carriage that was no longer playing chess. His face was full of awe and fear. He shouted in a trembling voice, "This is God's calculation? This is God's calculation." The yellow-clothed old monk slowly stood up with great difficulty. Then he turned to the black horse carriage and bowed. At this moment, the spectators finally confirmed that Sang Sang had won. They could not help but exclaim. The cultivators who really knew chess looked at the densely packed chess pieces on the chessboard. They were shocked and speechless, but they could not help but praise. They looked at the black horse carriage with awe in their eyes. When they knelt before the black horse carriage, they were also in awe. But at that time, they were in awe of Sang Sang's identity as the Lady of Light and the powerful authority of the West Hill Divine Palace. But now, they were in awe of the Lady of Light's pure wisdom in solving the game. Since they were cultivators, they certainly knew what this pure wisdom meant. In the past 2 years, the cultivation world had vaguely known that the successor of the former Divine Priest of Light was in Chang'an. But because the West Hill Divine Palace had intentionally or unintentionally covered it up, they did not know what kind of person the Lady of Light was. Later, they learned that the Lady of Light was the daughter of a minister of the Tang Empire and the handmaiden of Mr. 13 of the Academy. They could not help but wonder what kind of potential or ability she had to be valued by the West Hill Divine Palace and chosen as the successor of the former Great Divine Priest of Light. Until today, they finally understood that everything made sense. Sang Sang had really solved the game. Even Ning Ke could not believe it for a while. Of course, he was very happy, especially when he recalled the silent tile mountain, with only Sang Sang's clear voice echoing around the stone table. He actually felt the happiness and sadness of having a daughter growing up in his family. Just as the yellow-clothed old monk bowed and admitted defeat, he suddenly noticed that the high monk of the Xiankong temple under the Buddhist sedan under the bridge leaned forward slightly, as if he was paying attention to Sang Sang. He could not help but be alarmed. He withdrew his gaze from the Buddhist sedan and asked, "Can we go up the mountain?" Monk Guan Hai had been standing by and witnessed the whole process of Sang Sang solving the game. He sincerely praised, "She is indeed the legendary Lady of Light. Man's plan is better than God's. Senior brother, please." Seeing Sang Sang's glory, the big black horse proudly thought that although his mistress looked ordinary, she was not bad at all. He could not help but snort happily. The horses that were grazing by the stream heard his snort and subconsciously became afraid. They ran up the grassy slope in disorder. The black horse carriage slowly drove up the stone bridge and crossed the jumping tiger stream. Looking at the black horse carriage gradually disappearing into the depths of the tile mountain, the cultivators were in awe. The chess master from South Jin Kingdom seemed to have thought of something. He ran up the stone bridge and chased after the black horse carriage. He did not solve the game, but crossed the stone bridge. The yellow-clothed old monk should have stopped the crazy chess master from South Jin Kingdom, but he seemed to have forgotten about it. He just looked at the game on the stone table in silence. He had been watching this game for decades and was confident that he had understood all the changes in the game. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that he could not understand the game. If it was someone else who presided over the game today, the black chess would have been defeated by Sang Sang's awesome God's calculation. However, because he understood the game better than anyone else in the world, He struggled to hold on for a long time before Song Song's god's calculation. His mind was severely damaged. The autumn wind blew. The yellow-clothed old monk's body suddenly shook, and a stream of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The chaotic coup game emphasizes on being unconventional, winding paths leading to seclusion. However, how could the predecessors who laid down this game have imagined that there was someone who was able to turn a secluded winding path into a broad and open road just by calculating? He wiped off the blood with his monk sleeve and looked at the black and white chess pieces on the chessboard. He said in a slightly bitter voice, "Since there are people in the world who can predict the future, this chess game is meaningless. Let it stay here." As soon as he finished speaking, the yellow-clothed old monk waved his sleeve and brushed off a leaf on the chessboard. Cheng Ziqing frowned and asked, "Master, if we keep this game, what should we do next? If the game is not finished, how can we talk about passing? Those who want to cross the stream, please help yourself," the yellow-clothed old monk said, and then floated away. Hearing that they could pass this stage without solving the Luan Ku game, the cultivators under the big green tree were overjoyed. They all walked to the stone bridge. The famous Song Kingdom Taoist, who loved chess, lagged behind. He walked to the stone table and looked at the game. He subconsciously reached out to pick up a white chess piece, but he found that he could not pick it up. He could not help but be shocked. It turned out that before the yellow-clothed old monk left, he had used some unknown method to press all the black and white chess pieces into the stone chessboard. From that day on, the Luan Ku game would forever stay under the green tree beside the jumping tiger stream on Hua Mountain. It would not be messed up again after experiencing wind, frost, rain, and snow. And the legendary 3 games on Hua Mountain would forever be 1 game short. This is the first chapter. I'm really writing it. I've spent half a day on this chapter. If you still have monthly votes, please vote them. I really can't take it anymore. When the next chapter will be, I'm not sure, but there will definitely be one. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 559. A black horse carriage was moving slowly in the depths of the Hua Mountain. The bluestone road was very smooth, but the mud between the bluestone roads had been washed away by the wind and rain for many years, gradually forming stone cracks about a few fingers wide. Although the carriage was as light as a feather, the steel wheels rolled over these stone cracks, so it was inevitable that it would be a little bumpy. Naturally, it was difficult for the people in the carriage to sleep. Sang Sang reclined on the quilt beside the window, her eyelashes gently covering her face. She was obviously weak from illness, but her pale cheeks were flushed and there was a small bead of sweat on the tip of her nose. It seemed that she was still a little excited. Emo Shanshan sat on the soft cushion opposite her and looked at her quietly. Her sparse and long eyelashes fluttered slightly and her eyes were bright. She seemed to be a little curious and a little impressed. Sang Sang was a little nervous under her gaze and said softly, "Can you not look at me like that?" Emo Shanshan came back to herself and said calmly, "When the chess game ended, there were many people beside the jumping tiger stream who wanted to see you. Their gazes were much more passionate than mine. It's just that the walls of this carriage are too thick, or else those gazes would have burned a hole. And you have to get used to this kind of gaze in the future." Sang Sang opened her eyes and looked at her curiously. "Just now, there were really many people looking at me like that?" Emo Shanshan nodded. "It's rare for someone to look at me like that." "Yes, it's never happened before," Sang Sang said in a low voice. Then, she seemed to think of something and looked out of the window. The autumn wind blew the green curtains, bringing the scenery of the Hua Mountain into the carriage, making it a little clear and helpless. "I've never been good-looking since I was a child. Ning Kei said that for the first 2 years after I was picked up, I couldn't grow up no matter if I drank meat soup or rice soup. I was like a little mouse in his arms." She looked at the mountain scenery outside the window and said in a daze, "Although I was raised by him, I still couldn't be raised to look good. I was thin, small, and dark. Even my hair wasn't good. It was soft and yellow. I looked like a cabbage that hadn't been picked in time. Even if I wore new clothes for the new year, I still looked listless. Ning Ke once laughed at me. He said that no matter if I was thrown into a vegetable field or a coal mine, no one would find me. He was right. I have always been the most inconspicuous handmaiden. Sang Sang said, when I was a child, I dragged 17 kilograms of lamb leg home from the butcher shop in the city of Wei. No one thought of helping me. It's not that the people in the city of Wei are not enthusiastic, but they really don't see me. It's the same in Chang'an. I lived in the old brush pen shop for 2 years, and I almost went to buy it every morning. But sometimes the uncle selling hot and sour noodle slice soup at the entrance of Lin 47th Street would forget who I am. She turned around and smiled at Emo Shanshan. Her smile was genuine, and her 2 white front teeth seemed to light up the dark carriage. She said, Ning Ke is better looking than me, and his mouth is sweeter than mine. That's why it's easy for people to like him, be it General Ma of the city of Wei, Aunt Jian, or the headmaster of the academy. Then she continued, when I am with him, people only look at him. But it's actually good. I'm used to standing behind him. Anyway, I don't like to be stared at. Emo Shanshan looked at the girl who was calmly talking about the past, and found that she couldn't calm down. She didn't know what to say, so she kept silent. She remembered that when she left Chang'an, she was sitting in the horse carriage at the entrance of the Lin 47th Street and looked at the old brush pen shop from afar. At that time, Ning Ke and Sang Sang ate at the same table and seldom talked to each other. However, there was a natural harmony between the master and the servant in their gestures and even in their eyes. Emo Shanshan thought with mixed feelings. Even if you are the most inconspicuous handmaiden in the world, even if no one notices you, but you and Ning Ke only have eyes for each other, then at least he will always be looking at you. At least in Ning Ke's eyes, Sang Sang, you are beautiful. She said. I know what you mean, but I really hope that I can be really beautiful. So after I arrived in Chang'an, I started to buy cosmetics in Chenjinji Cosmetics Store even though I didn't make much money. Sang Sang smiled embarrassedly and turned to look out of the window. At this time, there were countless colors on Tile Mountain. Because of the warm and humid sea breeze, the trees were still green and lush even though it was late autumn. The higher they went, the lower the temperature became. The color of the leaves also changed accordingly. Yellow was like tender chrysanthemum and red was like rouge. Layer by layer, it was beautiful. When I was a child in Min Mountain, I liked to look at trees in autumn, just like the trees outside the window. I think they are beautiful, but Ning Ke doesn't like them. He always said that when the leaves turn yellow, the beasts in the mountain will either hibernate or die, and hunting will become more and more difficult. He also said that no matter how beautiful the yellow and red leaves are, they can only be beautiful for a short time, and then they will be blown off and become useless mud. After saying this, Sang Sang looked at the mountain scenery outside the window and was silent for a long time. Until her face was a little cold from the mountain breeze, she frowned and became determined. Then she said, You like young master, don't you? She had been talking about Ning Ke, but now she was talking about young master. Emo Shanshan was sure that she did not hear it wrong. She looked at her blankly and did not know what to say. She knew that Ning Ke and Sang Sang were engaged. When she heard Sang Sang's sudden question, she could not help but feel confused. She subconsciously looked down at the tips of her shoes that were not covered by her white cotton dress. The shoes were ordinary shoes. No matter how long she looked at them, she could not see anything. Her hair trembled slightly in front of her eyes. Her eyes were a little unfocused, and her thin red lips became tighter and tighter. She was inexplicably nervous. However, she was a quiet and sincere calligraphy addict. She especially did not want to hide anything from Sang Sang, and it was meaningless to hide anything. So she gently nodded. Sang Sang heard a sound behind her. but she did not turn back. She only smiled at Qiushan, revealing 2 white front teeth. In the past years, Sang Sang felt that she was not good-looking. Although her teeth were neat, her 2 front teeth were a little conspicuous. So she did not want to laugh heartily like other girls in the Tang Empire. Even if she laughed, she would usually lower her head and smile shyly. Or she would smile innocently like when she cheated Chen Pippi of money, or she would smile foolishly after her little feet were warmed by Ning Quebec. But recently, she did not know why she often smiled. Her 2 white front teeth made her look as cute as a little rabbit. She looked at the tree full of red leaves by the road. It was like a burning tree, she said, but not now. Mo Shanshan quietly looked at her thin back. After a moment, she smiled and said, The black horse carriage drove on the mountain road of Hua Mountain. A red leaf fell from the branches and landed on the roof of the carriage. Then it was shaken to the grass by the road. It was not crushed into mud, but it would eventually become mud. The autumn wind blew, and Song Song's smile gradually disappeared. Thinking of the red leaf, she said seriously, Wait until after I die. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 560. During the conversation in the carriage, Mo Shanshan had been softly humming. Hearing Song Song's last sentence, she hummed again without thinking. Then she realized something was wrong, so she hummed again. She raised her voice slightly at the end to express doubt and shock, as well as some complex emotions that could not be accurately conveyed by the tone alone. If this conversation had taken place between other women in the world, they would probably have thought that it was full of tension and sarcasm. However, Mo Shanshan knew Sang Sang very well, so she understood that Sang Sang did not have any intention of showing off, but was seriously telling the truth. She knew from Ning Ke that Sang Sang was seriously ill and came to the Lank Temple for treatment. Although Master Qishan might have a way, even the headmaster of the academy could not cure Sang Sang. Even if there was hope, it was very unlikely. Thinking of Song Song's last 2 sentences, she felt a little sad. It was almost noon. The black horse carriage stopped beside a Zen temple on the mountainside to rest for a while. Monk Guan Hai caught up from behind and arranged for the monks to prepare lunch. He led Ning Ke and the others into a quiet courtyard. Sang Sang had spent some energy on the chess game and was still weak. After eating a few mouthfuls of vegetables, she felt a little tired. Ning Ke carried her into the inner room and spread out the clean bedding on the bed to cover her. Then he carefully tucked in the corner of the quilt, making sure that no autumn wind could sneak in before he was relieved. I told you to ignore the chess game, but you didn't listen. Ning Ke looked at her haggard face and said uneasily. Sang Sang whispered, But I really feel that chess is interesting. I heard that after I won, many people admired me. Aren't you happy? Ning Ke thought about it and said, I am indeed very happy and proud. Sang Sang smiled contentedly. Ning Ke reached out to cover her eyes and let her sleep. Sang Sang refused to close her eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered, making Ning Ke's palms a little itchy. Ning Quebec, Song Song's voice came through his fingers. Ning Ke looked slightly surprised and said, Yes. Sang Sang said, You are mine. Ning Ke laughed and said, I am yours. What is yours is yours. What is yours is all yours. Sang Sang said after a moment of silence, I am not a good person, am I? If the Lady of Light is not a good person, then who is? Am I really the Lady of Light? I killed someone at such a young age. When did you kill someone? Didn't I kill Grandpa? You only poured a bucket of boiling water. I was the one who cut it. Then I'm also your accomplice. What's going on in that head of yours? Ning Ke was a little annoyed and said, Since young, I have tried my best not to let you stain your hands with blood. But now, you want to prove that you have stained your hands with blood. Are you very proud? Sang Sang turned her back to him and said, I'm not proud. I just feel that I'm not the kind of good person many people think I am. On the way up the mountain, Sang Sang, Shan Shan, and the horse carriage spoke softly, but Ning Ke heard everything. He could guess what Sang Sang wanted to say, but he did not want to hear it. However, as before, Sang Sang would definitely do what he did not want to do as long as she wanted to do it. Just like now, he did not want to hear it, but Sang Sang still talked to herself. I used up all the money I had to buy the house by Yenming Lake, and I still owe Mr. Chi more than 700 taels of silver. If I can get some dividends from the gambling house after winter, then I can pay it off in advance next year. But I always feel that it is not good to owe people money, so I am thinking whether I can rent out the old brush pen shop. Those sent by the Emperor and the Empress are all collected into a book, which I put at the bottom of the winter clothes box in the West Wing room. Her Highness sent 160 big trees. I have inquired about it. There are many rich people in West Mountain, and they like these trees very much. If you want to sell them, they will be sold for more than 500 taels of silver. Auntie Wu borrowed 14 taels of silver last time and hasn't paid it back. I also know that Boss Wu borrowed money from you last time, but you just know how much it is. Besides, oil, salt, soy sauce and vinegar, I don't want you to say that I am stingy again. But remember, I hid a gold brick in the brick wall behind the pile of firewood in the courtyard of the old brush pen shop. Sang Sang looked at the wall and did not dare to turn around. She said shyly, "When I was a child, I was worried that you would not marry me when you grew up, and that your new sister-in-law would not let me stay at home. So I have been secretly saving money, thinking that if I really got married, I would not need to worry about having some dowry. I have been saving money since I arrived in Chang'an." Ning Ke was stunned when he heard this. He thought that both of them had lived carefully enough in their lives, but she could still save money. He could not help but admire her and said with a smile, "I think His Majesty should really invite you to be the Minister of Revenue." Sang Sang ignored his joke and said seriously, "I have saved more than 2,100 taels of silver, which are all with Auntie Jane. I know you have never liked to sell calligraphy. When you entered Chang'an, I forced you to. If you really need money in the future, you can use my money." These words sounded like the last words of the mistress of the family. Ning Ke was angry and amused, but he really did not care about auspiciousness. He asked, "What about the gold brick?" Sang Sang turned around and looked at him seriously. "I left that gold brick for my parents." Ning Ke recalled what she told him and asked, "You left nothing for me except the silver. The shoes and socks have been made for many years. Anyway, I am not good at needlework, so you can wear them." Sang Sang suddenly remembered something and whispered, "There is a small black box under the bed in the old brush pen shop. Don't forget it." Ning Ke did not know that Sang Sang had a small black box until last year. In the small black box, there were some things that he had decided to throw away for some reason, but they were actually very precious to him, such as the funeral invitation that he had made on the rainy night after Darky's death. He nodded and said, "I know." Sang Sang shook her head and said, "You don't know. You threw away the letters that the calligraphy addict sent you after reading them, and then I kept them all. Now there are more than a dozen of them." After a moment of silence, Ning Ke said, "Reading the letters once is enough. Who would take them out all the time?" Sang Sang suddenly smiled and said, "I originally thought that when we are old and lying on the bamboo chairs in the old brush pen shop waiting for death, I would take out the small black box and let you read those letters again. I thought that would make you very happy. Unfortunately, it seems that I can't grow old with you. I don't know where you learned these sour words." Ning Ke put his hand into the quilt and held her slightly cold hand. He said with a smile, "That is the fantasy of the stupid literati. You are still so young, so you shouldn't be so sour and smelly." "I haven't taken a bath for a few days. Isn't it sour and smelly?" Sang Sang said, "Young master, I may really die. I can't wait until I am old to tell you these, so I am in a hurry to tell you now. Don't think I am annoying." Ning Ke smiled and asked, "Not at all. I just want to know if you have finished saying your last words. Sang Sang happily replied, almost done. Ninkei said, you still have the energy to play chess and talk nonsense. You don't look like you are going to die. Besides, you can see Master Chishan today. The headmaster said that he can cure you, so he must be able to cure you. What last words? Sang Sang opened her eyes wide and insisted, but what if? What if I can't say it in time? Ninkei said, okay. If you want to say it every year. Sang Sang was amused by him and then began to cough. Her thin body trembled slightly and her brows were tightly knitted. Her face was pale and she seemed to be in great pain. Ninkei flicked his left index finger and a thin piece of fu paper floated into the air of the meditation room. It began to burn silently and turned into a warm fireball. It floated in the air like a small sun. Then he held Sang Sang in his arms and gently patted her on the back. Sang Sang coughed painfully and only felt better after a while. She closed her eyes and said in a weak voice, I'm not a good person and I'm not good looking. I can do nothing but housework. But I married you. Many people will think that you have suffered a loss. Ninkei said, it sounds like I have indeed suffered a loss. Sang Sang smiled and said, it's not a big deal. Who asked you to pick me up back then? Ninkei also smiled and said, it's all my fault that my ears were too sharp. Sang Sang slowly opened her eyes and looked at him seriously. She said, Ninkei, the first person I saw when I opened my eyes was you. So when I close my eyes, I want to see you die. Ninkei confirmed, do you want to see me and then die, or do you want to see me die? The first part is quite sad, but the second part is too cruel. Do you really want me to die before you? Sang Sang laughed and said, you know what I'm talking about. When I die, you can marry her or anyone else. It's up to you. Ninkei shook his head and said, if you die, I really don't want to live anymore. Sang Sang said, you said that I was jealous. Look at you, this is what a woman should say. Ninkei said, I am a woman. Sang Sang smiled and said, then I will be a man. Sang Sang fell asleep. Ninkei walked out of the meditation room and stood in the courtyard, facing the autumn tree outside the wall. He was in a daze for a long time. He thought of many things, the things in the past and the things in the present. Then he thought of the chess game. Many years ago, he knew that Sang Sang had an unimaginable calculating ability. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was a genius. Sang Sang's ability had helped him a lot since he was a child, when he was hunting in the Min Mountain and chopping firewood in the city of Wei. However, except for this kind of life and death battle, he seemed to selectively forget all the talents of Sang Sang. Because he was used to standing in front of Sang Sang and shielding her from the wind and rain. But this time, would he still be able to shield her from the storm and the dark? The title is like what Susan said. Writing this kind of plot is really asking for trouble. Just like the second chapter yesterday, it is really exhausting. But I like to ask for trouble like this. Self-abuse is also a kind of pleasure. Today, the second chapter will be out before 10:30, and there are 4 chapters in total today. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 561. After more than a decade of ups and downs, Ninkei had never hesitated because it had become a habit. Once it became a habit, it would become the most powerful force. However, he did not expect that some habits would be broken on this trip to the Lank Temple and Tile Mountain. Beside the jumping tiger stream, Sang Sang said that she would try to solve the game by herself, which surprised him. Because he knew that although she was a little vain sometimes, she was never competitive. More importantly, according to past habits, in this kind of situation, she should quietly stand by his side, waiting for him to solve the problem. He thought of many reasons, such as the other girl in the carriage. However, after listening to Sang Sang's words in the meditation room, he realized that Sang Sang was just trying to prove herself. To prove herself was to prove to herself that it had nothing to do with the world. Sang Sang just wanted to prove to herself that she was no longer a silent handmaiden by Ning Kei's side, but a wife who could share his burden. She even wanted to try to shelter him from the wind and the rain. Because she also had needs. The need to be needed by Ning Kei and the need to make Ning Kei proud. Ning Kei looked at the autumn tree and frowned slightly. Then he reached out and gently flicked the red leaves in the meditation room and said, "What an idiot. I raised you. Do I need you to think for me and protect me?" During the conversation in the meditation room, he felt like crying several times. However, he managed to cover it up with his cold temperament and talent for acting. Now that he was the only one in the courtyard, he could not help but wipe his eyes. He felt very embarrassed. Looking at the red leaves on the branches of the autumn tree that were about to fall, he scolded angrily, "Just because of this, even if you die, I will go to the underworld to catch you and teach you a lesson." Light footsteps sounded. Shanshan, who was wearing a white cotton dress, walked over and stood beside him without looking at his face. The meditation room was quiet, except for Song Song's uncomfortable coughing in her sleep. The two looked at the red leaves in silence. Ning Kei suddenly said, "Ah, ah, ah." Emo Shanshan said, "Yes, yes, ah." There was still a sound in the silence. At this moment there was a commotion outside the temple. It seemed that someone wanted to enter the courtyard but was stopped by the monks in the temple. An intense argument broke out between the two parties, instantly breaking the silence in the courtyard. Ning Kei could tell that it was the voice of the South Jin Kingdom's imperial chess master. He could not help but frown and look at the courtyard door. "Why do you want to see her?" "Of course I want her to acknowledge me as her master." "You are also monks of the Lank Temple. Don't you know what the divination of heaven means? There hasn't been a heavenly diviner in tens of thousands of years. How can he cultivate?" "Of course I want to play chess. Although that little girl is a heaven-defying person, the way of chess is as vast as the ocean. How could it be so simple? If she is willing to become my disciple and learn chess, I will definitely teach her everything I know in my life. That little girl has such talent. Today, she has met a brilliant teacher like me. As long as she focuses on chess, she will become the overlord of the chess world in 10 years. She will be stronger than Master Dongming of the Lank Temple. She may even surpass the greatest Master Song Qian in the history of the South Jin Kingdom and become the legendary chess sage. If she could become the chess saint, why would she be the Lady of Light? Get out of the way. What if she runs away?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master's angry roars kept ringing outside the temple. It was obvious that no matter how much he scolded or stomped his feet, the monks of the Lank Temple would not allow him to disturb Ning Kei and the others. Ning Kei thought that this fellow was really crazy about chess. He actually had the temperament of his fellow disciples in the back of the mountain of the academy. He was a little angry that Sang Sang might have been woken up, but now he could not get angry. Emo Shanshan suddenly said, "Actually, I am very jealous of her and also of you." Ning Kei was stunned. "I know that you and Sang Sang have had a hard time in the past. I am very jealous of the hardships you have suffered together." Emo Shanshan smiled and said, "I will quiet that person. Don't worry." No one knew what Emo Shanshan said, but the South Jin Kingdom chess master actually did not insist on seeing Sang Sang. The temple was quiet again. However, she did not come back to see the red leaves with Ning Quebec. Ning Kei knew what this meant. He felt a slight loss and then calmed down. He quietly looked at the branch that extended into the temple and the red leaves on it. He paid attention to Song Song's movements in the temple. There was a fan-shaped stone window on the white wall of the temple. It was used for ventilation and the view of the mountains outside the temple could be seen. A young girl's face appeared in the fan-shaped stone window. That face was cold and emotionless. However, because it was too beautiful, it was as charming as a flower that had been washed by dew. As such, it was an extremely beautiful scene in the stone window. Because she was the princess of the Yueluan kingdom, the flower addict Lu Chenjia. Ning Ke looked at Lu Chenjia and raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not say anything. Lu Chenjia looked at Ning Ke through the window. Her fingers gently played with an inconspicuous yellow flower. She said indifferently, "I did not expect your handmaiden to become the successor of the divine priest of light." Ning Ke said, "I am engaged to her." Lu Chenjia's voice was cold and emotionless. She said, "How old is your wife?" Ning Ke said, 16. Lu Chenjia shook her head and said, "She doesn't look more than 13 or 14. Ning Ke said, "She had a very serious typhoid when she was young. She was not well nourished, so the root of the illness has not been cured. She looks a little thin and weak. She will be fine after 2 more years." He had only met the flower addict a few times and were not familiar with her. They had even had an intense conflict in the wilderness. Especially because of Prince Longqing, it was impossible for them to become friends. He could have ignored her, but for some reason, he seriously explained Song Song's illness. Lu Chenjia asked softly, "Is her illness acting up again?" Ning Ke did not hide it and said, "Yes." Lu Chenjia looked into his eyes and asked, "You came to the Lank Temple to ask Master Qishan to treat her illness?" Ning Ke said, "That's right." Lu Chenjia's expression finally changed. She asked in confusion, "Even the headmaster can't cure her?" Ning Ke said, "Yes." Lu Chenjia gently rubbed the thin stem of the yellow flower and said softly, "Aunt is having an afternoon nap. I was bored, so I walked around and said a few words to you when I saw you. I did not expect you to be willing to answer me." Ning Ke looked at her and said, "They say that you are crazy about flowers. Coincidentally, there is a senior brother in the academy who also loves flowers. He is skilled in medicine, so I want to see if you have any solution for Song Song's illness." The medicine that Sang Sang had been taking along the way had all been prescribed by 11th brother. Wang Qi. Ning Ke thought that since senior brother was skilled in herbs, then the flower addict might also be skilled in medicine. Although this deduction did not seem to make much sense, he could not care so much about it. Lu Chenjia smiled faintly and said, "There is no friendship between us. We even have some grudges. Under such circumstances, you are actually willing to beg me. It seems that she is very important to you." Ning Ke said, "Everyone has someone important to them." "Yes, for example, Longqing to me." Lu Chenjia looked into Ning Ke's eyes and the smile on her face faded. She said indifferently, "Even the headmaster of the academy cannot cure her. Do you really think that Master Qishan can? The thought of you watching the most important person in your life die before your eyes is the best thing that can happen to me." Ning Ke was not angered by her words. He looked at her calmly and said, "Because of what you said, if Song Song's illness cannot be cured, I will kill Kunimati, your father, the emperor of Yueluan kingdom, and everyone else in the world who means anything to you. Then, I will kill you and bury you with Sang Sang." Lu Chenjia's expression was cold, but she did not show any fear. She said indifferently, "Then you must first leave Tile Mountain alive." Ning Ke said, "There is no place in the world that can keep me." Lu Chenjia's expression changed slightly. She looked at him and asked, "Are you really not afraid?" Ning Ke said, "What do I need to be afraid of?" Lu Chenjia said, "You killed Master Dao Shi. Aren't you afraid that the high monks of Xiankong Temple will imprison you for 1,000 years? Ning Ke said, "If Xiankong Temple had the guts, the academy would have ceased to exist long ago." Lu Chenjia suddenly smiled and said, "But if the rumors are true and you are the son of Yama, then I believe that both the Buddhism sect and Haotian Taoism will kill you at all costs. So this is what you want to scare me about. Unfortunately, I am not. You all have no evidence to prove that I am." Ning Ke looked at her and said, "And I want to tell you something. Prince Longqing lost to me in front of Red Lotus Temple a few days ago. He said that he is the son of Yama." After saying this, he turned around and walked into the monastery. Hearing Longqing's name, Lu Chenjia's expression became a little strange. She looked at Ning Kei's receding figure without any emotion in her eyes. However, she used some strength in her fingers and broke the flower stem. The pitiful yellow flower fell at her feet. Ning Kei helped Sangsang up from the bed and fed her the medicine. Then, he used the Great Spirit to sense the condition of her body. He confirmed that the poison she had been poisoned in front of Red Lotus Temple was basically gone. The cold aura seemed to have been temporarily suppressed by Yi Hongyu's divine light and was in a dormant state. It should not act up in a short period of time. He knew that this was not a good thing. The longer the cold aura stayed dormant, the more terrifying it would be when it acted up. If he tried to suppress it forcefully, it would become more and more difficult. He had already used Yi Hongyu, who was now the great divine priest of judgment. Would he have to go to Jishou Abbey next time? Therefore, he could only pin all his hopes on the Lank Temple, on Master Qishan, who was said to be like Buddha and would grant all his requests. At this moment, thinking of how he had been so tough on the monks of the Lank Temple because of his anxiety at the jumping tiger stream, he could not help but feel a little scared. How could he have shouted at a doctor before treating a patient? "What is this?" Sangsang looked at the small brocade pouch in her hand and asked in confusion. Ning Kei said, "Master left me something. I used one at the front gate of the Devil's Doctrine. There is still one left. Take it with you. If anything happens later, tell me in your heart. The third chapter will be written later. I will try to finish it before 1 o'clock. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 562. They walked out of the temple and got on the black horse carriage. After a while, they saw an old pavilion in the forest. This pavilion was not desolate and lonely in the autumn wind because it was too tall. It was as tall as an ordinary 3-story building, with huge beams and flying eaves. It stood still amidst the red and yellow leaves, looking quite imposing. The second game of the 3 games of chess on Hua Mountain would be played in this pavilion. Monk Guanhai led the crowd to the pavilion and stopped. Because the chaotic game at Jumping Tiger Stream had been cancelled, there were still many cultivators present, but no one dared to speak loudly. The Buddhist sedan stopped about 100 feet away from the pavilion. The president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple was still silent, but many people were secretly looking at him. Ning Kei had said that if he and Sangsang could not play, then no one else could. The high monk of the Xiankong Temple seemed to follow his words. Maybe because of this, Cuny Madi, who was under the Buddhist sedan, looked at the black horse carriage with more hatred, while the flower addict, Lu Chenjia, looked indifferent. There was an old monk in the pavilion. He must be the host of the second game. This old monk was wearing a monk robe made of plain cloth. His face was full of deep wrinkles that hung down like autumn branches with fruits hanging on them. He seemed to be much older than the yellow-clothed old monk by the Jumping Tiger Stream. The old monk in the pavilion first bowed to the Buddhist sedan in the distance. The figure of the high monk in the Buddhist sedan leaned forward, as if he was solemnly returning the bow. The old monk looked at the black horse carriage and said, "The Lady of Light and Mr. 13 of the Academy have come to Hua Mountain. It is an honor for me." Ning Kei did not know the old monk's identity and generation. He thought of his previous self-reflection and returned the bow. The old monk continued, "Aunt Chu of Yueluan Kingdom, Mr. Cheng of Sword Garret, the calligraphy addict, and the flower addict are all here. Also, the Crown Prince of South Jin Kingdom is here. Hua Mountain has not seen such a grand scene for many years. It is very impressive." The old monk sounded emotional, but in fact, his voice was indifferent and mechanical. He introduced the bigwigs who had come to Hua Mountain as if he was taking names. He did not feel emotional at all. He was probably just being polite when he said it was an honor. After the formalities, they got to the main topic. The old monk did not say much and sat quietly in a corner of the pavilion. There was a huge wooden chessboard in front of him. A wooden fork was placed on the opposite side of the chessboard, and a curtain hung from the pavilion to the ground. The second game of the 3 games of chess on Wa Mountain was always a duel. Judging from the shape of the fork, it should be used to place the pieces on the chessboard. The curtain looked extremely thick, but what was it for? The old monk was already prepared for a game of chess. He used his actions to send out an invitation. The people outside the pavilion were still very quiet. No one walked into the pavilion. Everyone wanted to pass the test and reach the top of Wa Mountain. The last game of chess on the top of the mountain was likely to be hosted by Master Chishan himself. Even if he couldn't become the fated person chosen by the master, it would still be a great fortune to be able to play a game with the master. The reason why no one walked into the pavilion wasn't because they didn't want to try, but because the person in the black carriage hadn't spoken yet. Even if they wanted to play chess with the old monk, they couldn't beat him to it. The black carriage moved slowly again until it stopped in front of the stone steps of the pavilion. The old monk looked at the black carriage, and suddenly a strange light flashed in his eyes. His voice was still as calm as water. He said slowly, "I heard that the Lady of Light defeated my untalented younger brother with her heaven's divination at the jumping tiger stream. I think she must be very good at chess." Hearing this, Ning Ke thought that the Lank Temple was indeed very popular in chess. Even the reclusive elder, who had cultivated to a state of mind like still water, refused to admit defeat in this aspect. It would be a tough battle later on. Ning Ke couldn't help but feel slightly worried. However, to his surprise, the old monk in the pavilion said slowly after a slight pause, "If you can see through the heaven's divination, why do you need to calculate the mysteries of chess? Mr. 13, you can take the Lady of Light up the mountain by yourself." Ning Ke was slightly startled. He turned back and said something to the carriage. He didn't know what Sang Sang said in the carriage, but he shook his head and turned back. He said, "I came to Wa Mountain to seek medical advice, so I naturally have to follow the rules of the mountain. I still have to play this game." Hearing this, the cultivators around the pavilion were shocked. They thought that he had tried to force his way up the mountain by the jumping tiger stream. He didn't care about the rules at all, but now he wanted to follow the rules? Monk Guan Hai was also puzzled and looked at Ning Quebec. The abbot of the Lank Temple was even more dissatisfied. He thought to himself that Ning Ke had changed from being arrogant to being respectful. What did he think the quiet place of the Buddhism sect was? Ning Ke naturally knew their reactions, but he couldn't do anything about it. Sang Sang had said that she wanted to play this game, and she even wanted to play a third game with Master Chishan when they reached the top of the mountain. If it had been in the past, Ning Ke would definitely not have cared about her thoughts and directly let the black carriage leave the pavilion and go straight to the top of the mountain. However, it was different now. He clearly knew the little girl's intentions. Since she could still hold on, then he would play. As long as she was happy, it didn't matter whether he won or lost the game. The mountain was getting higher and the autumn wind was getting colder. He took out his academy winter robe from the carriage and covered Sang Sang with it. He carried her into the pavilion and looked at the old monk. He said, "She is a little weak. Please don't be offended, master." The old monk said, "A patient should be treated. Why do you have to play this game?" Ning Ke said, "A patient always has the right to eat 2 more pieces of candy. I can't do anything about it." The old monk laughed. The wrinkles on his face were like the branches of a forest being blown by the wind. He said, "I have cultivated in peace and inaction all my life, but I can't completely get rid of the desire to win or lose. In fact, I also want to play this game." Ning Ke couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. He thought that this old monk was much more interesting than the previous one. The old monk looked at Sang Sang, whose head and face were covered by the black robe. He pointed to the thick curtain opposite the chessboard and said, "Since you are a patient, you can't stand the wind. Just sit inside." Hearing this, Ning Ke took Sang Sang to the curtains and found that they were made of thick cotton. They hung from the pavilion to the ground and covered the surroundings, so that no wind could escape. There was a very thick straw mat on the ground and a cotton blanket. There was a gap in front of the curtains so that they could have a panoramic view of the big chessboard in the pavilion. He didn't expect the Lank Temple to be so well prepared. Ning Ke was very satisfied that he no longer had to worry about Sang Sang being blown by the wind. However, he suddenly thought of something and his heart suddenly tightened. The weakest part of a cultivator was their body. Faced with hundreds of arrows from ordinary people, even a powerhouse in the see-through state would be shot to death. However, cultivators could sense the chi of heaven and earth, so compared to ordinary people, it was extremely difficult for them to fall sick. For example, the cultivators outside the pavilion were not afraid of the wind. So who was the curtain in the pavilion prepared for? Of course it was Sang Sang. Ning Ke finally understood that the Lank Temple had been prepared for what would happen today. They had even confirmed that Sang Sang would be the one to break the game and not him. If the former was because the Academy had sent a letter to Master Qishan's cottage, then how could the latter be explained? Could it be that Master Qishan really had the ability to predict the future? Just as he was thinking about this with a frown, the voice of the South Jin Kingdom chess master came from outside the curtain. My eyesight is not good. Can I look closer? I can also be a judge for you. The old monk looked at the uninvited person from the South Jin Kingdom and asked indifferently, "Do you know chess?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master smiled and said, "A little." The old monk seemed to be satisfied with his answer and asked, "Which Taoist temple do you study from?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master's expression changed slightly and he replied, "My master is Su Su." The old monk said, "So it's Su Su. How is your chess skill compared to his?" The South Jin Kingdom chess master replied, "My master is old. I can barely beat him." The old monk nodded and said, "Then you do know a little about chess." The South Jin Kingdom chess master was extremely proud of his chess skills. He was just being reserved when he said that he knew a little. He did not expect the old monk to really think so. He could not help but feel annoyed. He had only admired 3 people in chess in his life. One was a palace chess master of the Yueluan Kingdom who had suddenly disappeared, the other was Master Dongming of the Lank Temple who was rumored to have passed away, and the one he admired and respected the most was his predecessor in the South Jin Kingdom, Master Song Qian, who had become a legend. Other than these 3 people, he did not care about the rest of the chess players. Even though he found out that Sang Sang had the ability to predict the future, he still wanted to take her as his student. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was angry and wanted to argue with the old monk. However, when he saw the old monk's face, he felt a chill in his heart and forgot to argue with the old monk. He was sure that he had never seen this old monk before. But he felt that the old monk's face was very familiar, as if he had seen him countless times. The South Jin Kingdom chess master thought hard but could not remember. At this moment, the second game of the 3 games on the Hua Mountain officially began. The old monk looked at the curtain and asked calmly, "Lady of Light, what color do you want?" Song Song's voice came from the curtain. She did not seem to have any hesitation, as if she did not need to think. "Black." Hearing Song Song's answer, the old monk's body trembled slightly. His old face showed a very complicated expression. He looked at the thick curtain and sighed with unspeakable regret. Sang Sang also heard the sigh from the curtain. She walked into the autumn pavilion and saw the old monk's kindness. She felt close to him. When she heard the regret in his sigh, she could not help but feel uneasy. She asked softly, "Can't I choose black?" The old monk shook his head slowly, as if he was still unwilling to give up. He looked at the curtain and asked, "In the first game on the Hua Mountain, players can only choose white. Those who can pass the first game usually have some kind of psychological hint that they can keep winning by choosing white. I wonder why the Lady of Light did not hesitate to choose black?" Sang Sang said, Because black is first and has an advantage, so I chose black. The old monk was a little surprised to hear this answer. At this moment, the South Jin Kingdom chess master finally recalled some memories from many years ago. He looked at the old monk as if he had seen a ghost and said with a trembling voice, "When I was a child in the Taoist field, I saw your portrait. You are Master Dongming. Aren't you dead?" This is the 3rd chapter. Try to finish the 4th chapter before 3 o'clock. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 563. The exclamation of the South Jin Kingdom chess master caused a commotion outside the pavilion. Anyone who knew how to play chess would have heard of Master Dongming's name, even if he had only learned a little. Around the Lank Temple, where there were many strong chess players, he was the only one recognized as the top player in the Hua Mountain for more than 100 years. Even in the world, he was the most outstanding figure. When Master Dongming was still a young monk, he had already shown his supreme wisdom in chess. He was responsible for guarding the last 3 games of chess on the Hua Mountain for more than a decade. When he was middle-aged, he suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was said that he had died a long time ago, but he was still the most legendary figure in the hearts of the chess players in the world. The South Jin Kingdom chess master looked at the old monk in the pavilion and thought that this old monk was regarded as the patriarch by many chess players. His body trembled uncontrollably and he said in a trembling voice, "Are you still alive?" The old monk looked at him in surprise and said, "I didn't expect that someone in the world would recognize me." The South Jin Kingdom chess master finally calmed down a little. He hurriedly knelt on the futon and bowed to the old monk. He said respectfully, "I have seen your portrait in the Taoist field since I was a child, so I know you." The old monk sighed and said, "When I was traveling in the South Jin Kingdom, I played a game of chess with Xiaosu. I didn't expect him to remember it." The South Jin Kingdom chess master did not dare to interrupt when the master mentioned his teacher. However, he could not suppress his doubts and asked, "Master, why did you disappear for so many years?" After a moment of silence, the old monk said, "Many years ago, a young man came to the Lank Temple. His chess skills were amazing and he defeated all the monks in the temple. So I went down the Hua Mountain and played 3 games with him. In the first 2 games, I won 1 game and lost 1 game. In the 3rd game, we had a dispute because of a different calculation method." The young man was extremely proud. He was probably anxious, so his words became more and more unpleasant. "At that time, I did not know why I was angry and slapped him. The young man spat out a mouthful of blood and scolded me for being shameless. He left with hatred. I thought about what had happened that day and found that his calculation method was correct. I could not help but feel remorseful. After being enlightened by Elder Chishan, I left the chess room and lived in seclusion. I used cultivation to resolve my regret." The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was shocked. He was proud of his amazing chess skills, and the chaotic game beside the jumping tiger stream was not difficult for him. But he never thought that he could defeat Master Dongming in chess. Even if Master Dongming had not touched the chessboard for many years, he still had no chance to win. But when Master Dongming was at his peak, someone could be on par with him. Who was that youth back then? The South Jin Kingdom chess master silently counted the time, and a legendary name that he admired the most gradually came to mind. But he couldn't say that name in front of Master Dongming, so he asked, "Why did you come out this time to preside over the Tile Mountain chess game?" The old monk looked at the curtain quietly. He did not speak, but he had already given his answer. Sang Sang was the only one who could bring the Grandmaster of the chess world back to the world. The chessboard was very big and so were the chess pieces. They needed to use specially made wooden forks to carry the chess pieces to the place where they wanted to land. Ning Ke wanted to help, but Sang Sang refused. Seeing that she was so focused that she even forgot to cough, Ning Ke was relieved. Then he focused on the chessboard through the gap of the curtain, although he could not understand it. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom could understand it, but he was much quieter than when he was beside the jumping tiger stream. He no longer jumped up and down, but sat on the futon and watched the chess pieces quietly. He looked very honest. He did not think that Sang Sang could defeat Master Dongming, not even the slightest possibility. He thought that today's game was more like the game he played with the Empress in the palace, because chess was definitely not a simple calculation. The highest level needed wisdom, experience, and even an elusive feeling. No matter how delicate the endgame was, it was still alive. But when playing, the person on the other side of the chessboard was alive. Even if Sang Sang was a heaven teller and could forcibly solve the chaotic game with her incredible calculation ability, how could she predict the thoughts of her opponent, especially an unfathomable chess player like Master Dongming? However, the development of the game was completely different from what the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom had imagined. In the Autumn Pavilion, the number of black and white chess pieces on the big chessboard gradually increased, but the balance was still maintained. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was sure that it was not because Master Dongming was old and weak, which caused his chess skills to decline. Instead, it was because the white chess moves were more exquisite than the chess manual he had seen in the Taoist field. The chess configuration was like an antelope hanging its horn, and there was no trace of it at all. It was so wonderful that it could not be calculated. Under such circumstances, the chess game was in a stalemate, which could only mean one thing. Sang Sang, who held the black chess piece, was not inferior to Master Dongming at all in the chess game. In the eyes of the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom, the black chess moves were completely different from Master Dongming's. The black chess moves were purely based on the incredibly meticulous calculation, which was so meticulous that there were no loopholes. Gradually, it gave off a feeling that it was made by nature. When the black chess piece made its first move, it seemed that it had already thought of what would happen after 100 moves. The clues were hidden in the ethereal chess moves, which could not be imagined by ordinary people. What was more shocking was that the black chess pieces were so ruthless and tough in the middle game, as if the will of God had come to the world. When the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom looked at Master Dongming's white chess pieces, he felt as if he had melted into the spring scenery, which was so warm and beautiful that he did not want to wake up. When he looked at Sang Sang's black chess pieces, he felt as if he had come to the winter waterfall and watched the cold water splashing on the snow-covered cliff. He soberly felt the beauty and pain, and wanted to leave but did not want to. Sometimes it was warm in spring, sometimes it was cold in winter, sometimes it was on the lake, and sometimes it was in front of the waterfall. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom looked at such a game and felt extremely happy. It was like a cultivator who had taken a heavenly power pill. He felt that his body had become so light that he could float to the pavilion at any time. It was so wonderful that he did not seem to be in the human world. When his eyes moved between the black and white chess pieces, he would wake up from time to time and look at the black chess pieces with some doubt. He felt that the chilling chess style was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. He thought that he was shocked by the reappearance of Master Dongming, so he was a little absent-minded. He always felt that everything he saw was familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Then he forgot about it. In the Autumn Pavilion, the black and white chess pieces on the big chessboard became denser and denser. The black and white colors on the chessboard created a feeling of harmony, which was perfect and balanced. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom stared at the chessboard in a daze and had long forgotten where he was. Although he was not a cultivator, he faintly understood something. The people outside the Autumn Pavilion were no exception. The chessboard in the pavilion was large enough for them to see clearly. However, at this time, in the quiet crowd, no one paid attention to the details of the game. They saw the alternation of night and day, morning and dusk. The world kept rotating, and then they heard the bell in the morning and the drum in the evening. Amidst the bell and drum in the evening, a sense of peace gradually emerged. There was no longer any desire to win or lose. The autumn wind blew, and the birds in the forest behind the pavilion were chirping and the cold insects were silent. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom did not know when his eyes became wet. After a long time, "The only thing I regret in my life is not being able to see Master Dongming and Master Song Qian play. Today I have seen it with my own eyes. Even if I die now, I will have no regret." The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom bowed to the old monk and said, "Thank you, master." Then he turned to bow to the curtain and said sincerely, "Thank you, young lady. You let me know that there are people with innate wisdom in the world. I am not qualified to be your teacher. I only wish to be your disciple." Sangsang said with some shame, "I rarely win in the mountains. I am not qualified to be your disciple." Hearing this, the chess master of the South Jin Kingdom was slightly shocked. He thought that her playing style was somewhat familiar and could not help but think of an impossible possibility. He asked with a trembling voice, "May I ask, young lady, did you learn chess from Master Song Qian?" Sangsang shook her head in confusion. Ning Ke frowned slightly. He felt that the name was strange, but he did seem to have heard it somewhere. The old monk looked at the curtain and asked with concern, "How is Mr. Song doing in the academy?" Hearing this, Ning Ke finally remembered that when the back of the mountain of the academy distributed winter clothes last year, second brother's little attendant had once said the name Song Qian. "Wasn't that, are you talking about fifth brother?" Ning Ke's voice spread outside the pavilion. People were shocked and began to talk. They just knew that Master Song Qian, the chess sage of South Jin Kingdom, had been cultivating on the second floor of the academy all these years. They could not help but admire the academy even more. The chess master of the South Jin Kingdom seemed to be dumbfounded. After a long time, he came to his senses and screamed, "I want to go to the academy! I want to go to the academy! I want to see Master Song Qian." Ning Ke did not expect that fifth brother, who was so obsessed with chess that he often forgot to eat and looked unkempt, would be so famous in the world. He could not help but be stunned. The game in the pavilion was over. The two sides were equally matched. No one had the heart to destroy the perfect combination of black and white. They even felt that it was a blasphemy to count the pieces. Therefore, there was no winner without the number of pieces. The regretful look on Master Dongming's face had disappeared. As if he had understood something, he looked at Sangsang through the curtain and said with a smile, "Black and white are determined by your heart. If you want to choose black, you choose black. If you want to choose white, you choose white. It's up to you. Life is no different from a chess game." Then he stood up and looked at Monk Guan Hai and the abbot of the Lank Temple outside the pavilion. He said slowly, "Since younger brother has sealed the chaotic Ku game by the stream, I will also seal this game. If there are guests who want to go up the mountain, please do not stop them." Monk Guan Hai was very surprised and asked in confusion, "Why?" Master Dongming said, "To be able to play a game of chess with such an opponent, and to be able to play such a game as the last game of my life. Is there a better ending than this?" The people outside the pavilion were very shocked. They thought that the chaotic Ku game by the stream had been sealed, and the second game in the pavilion had become the last one. Was the legendary 3 games of Tile Mountain going to end today? The black horse carriage slowly went to the top of the mountain. Ning Ke thought of the chess game in the pavilion and finally could not help asking, "Who won?" Sangsang said, "I should have won a few pieces, but the black pieces were at an advantage." Ning Ke was startled, and then he laughed. Then, he sighed and said, "No wonder fifth brother said that the monks in the Lank Temple were good at playing chess. You learned from him. Today, you beat that old monk, and you won back the blood that senior brother spat out back then." Dozens of days ago, at the back of the mountain of the academy, people saw Ning Ke and Sangsang off. At that time, fifth brother looked at Sang Sang and said kindly, Sang Sang's understanding of chess is far better than youngest brother's. The important task of maintaining the academy as the best chess player in the world will be handed over to you. The academy was the best in the world, whether it was chess, zither, or calligraphy. However, it was not easy to maintain this position. But it was just as fifth brother had hoped. Today, Sang Sang did it. I was late by a dozen minutes and wrote a few hundred more words. Otherwise, I would not be happy. Haha, yes, do you want to vote for me? To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for me and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 564. I've written 1 to 4 chapters, and I'll make sure to write 3 chapters tomorrow. I'm really working hard, so please support me, understand me, and encourage me. Secondly, while I'm breaking out, I'm also trying my best to ensure the quality. I don't dare to hope that everyone will like the plots I write, but what I want to say is that I'll try my best to write well. The updated ones will at least be ones that I like, and I hope that you guys will like them as well. Thirdly, the appearance of the Lank Temple a long time ago meant that they were going to play chess. Although I didn't know how to play chess, there were 2 main points in the legend of the Lank Temple, which were the main points in this volume. Sang Sang's chess playing had also been buried a long time ago. I was very happy to see it blossom today. Fourth, I'm still a fan of Sang Sang. Sang Sang said that I wrote attentively and satisfactorily. Don't say that I'm sour. I haven't showered for days, so of course I'm sour. When I opened the book at night, I said that Sang Sang was the female lead. I didn't say that I would spoil the story, but I did say that at least the ending of the book would be bright. Although I've always been melodramatic, there are some plots that I won't write because I'm not good at it. Fifth, Deep Sea Ling once wrote a book review about freedom. At the time, I said that freedom was one of the 2 things Jiang Yi wanted to write about in this book. I believe everyone already knows what the other thing is. It's that foreign poem that Chinese people are most familiar with, but I'll change the order. I've always wanted to wait a few more days before directly changing the introduction, but I can't help it anymore. 6. The annual monthly votes have once again increased to more than 1,000 votes. I hope that everyone will continue to support me. Another very important thing is that the annual monthly votes champion does not just look at one book, but all the books under the author's name. So if any of you have voted for Jiang Yi and have more votes, please vote for Spy, Qing Yunyan, or Vermilion Bird. I know that this is indeed very troublesome, so I'm sorry to trouble you. Thank you very much. 7. I know I'm a chatterbox. I won't delete this chapter within the year as a warning. 8. Please vote monthly, thank you. Joe, please vote again. Thank you very much. 10. Please vote again and again. Thank you very much. 11. Ditto. 12. And the same as above. 100. Even if I don't have monthly votes, I can still vote for him. Good night, everyone. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 565. As they got closer and closer to the peak of Tile Mountain, the Buddha statue became taller and taller in their eyes. It was as if the top of its head had touched the real sky. The cultivators were shocked to see this. The South Jin Kingdom chess master did not care about the Buddha statue at all. He followed the black horse carriage like an obedient student, his eyes full of admiration and yearning. The Crown Prince of South Jin Kingdom was naturally in a bad mood when he saw his subordinate behaving like this. When the mountain wind occasionally lifted the curtains of the carriage and revealed Mo Shanshan's beautiful face, his expression grew uglier. The monk in the Buddhist chariot was undoubtedly the most respected person there. Therefore, although he kept quiet, no one dared to approach except the sadhus of Yueluan Kingdom. For someone from the unknown lands to suddenly appear in the mortal world, it must be because of something important, but no one could guess the purpose of his visit. The terrain of Tile Mountain was extremely open and gentle, as if the whole mountain had been cut off from the middle. It naturally formed a huge stone platform. However, because the Buddha statue in the middle of the platform was too tall, it seemed a little small, like a tile stepped by the Buddha. The Buddha statue behind the Lank temple was said to be one of the tallest Buddha statues in the world. However, one could only truly feel the indescribable shock when standing in front of the Buddha statue. Ning-Kei looked up and saw a few wisps of autumn clouds floating past the chest of the Buddha statue. He remembered a few years ago when he brought Sang-Sang back to Chang'an and looked at the city wall of Chang'an, untowering in the clouds. Only then did he realize that the Buddha statue seemed to be taller than the city wall of Chang'an. He could not help but subconsciously feel small. The cave where Master Chishan lived was not on the peak. The black horse carriage bypassed the Buddha statue and followed the mountain path for a while. Then, they saw a shabby door under the huge left heel of the Buddha statue. The autumn sun had already set. The shadow of the Buddha statue on Tile Mountain almost covered the entire foothills of the back of the mountain. The cave was right under the Buddha statue and was even more secluded. The vines between the stone walls seemed to have turned into thick black lines. There was a natural cave on the cliff between the vines. There was a square stone platform in front of the cave. Next to the mountain path was a door made of firewood and grass. It was the shabby door that people saw. The lock on the door was rusty, and it was obvious that it was rarely opened. But today, the door to the hut had already been opened. The black horse carriage stopped in front of the hut. Ning-Kei helped Sang-Sang out of the carriage. It was the hottest time of the day. Although there were shadows over the mountains, it was not cold, so he did not put a coat on her. This was the first time many cultivators saw Sang-Sang's appearance clearly. Everyone looked at this ordinary-looking, yellow-haired, and listless little girl, and couldn't help but feel astonished. Could this unremarkable little girl be the legendary Lady of Light? Monk Guan Hai led them into the hut. An old monk stood outside the cave. It was unknown how long he had been waiting. Those who lived in seclusion in the Hua Mountain were all senior monks of the Lank Temple, so they were naturally very old. However, this old monk was a little different. It was still autumn, but the old monk had already put on a thick cotton robe. He seemed to be extremely afraid of the cold, but he didn't look fat in such a thick robe. One could imagine how thin the body under the robe was. Looking at his yellow-haired, long eyebrows and listless appearance, it seemed that he was sick or had been sick for a long time. Sang-Sang opened her eyes wide and looked at the old monk curiously. She felt that he was very close and familiar. After a while, she understood what was going on and couldn't help but smile. The old monk also smiled and said, "Could it be that people who have been sick for a long time in the world look similar? I feel close to you, little girl, and I think you feel the same way. It's a pity that I can't even cure my own illness. Maybe you will feel disappointed later, but don't be distant from me." The old monk was naturally Master Chishan. In order to save the world during the flood, Master Chishan had spent a lot of effort and cultivation. After he was seriously ill, he had to fight against the torrential turbid waves for a whole night. His cultivation was almost destroyed, and this illness had been with him for decades. Ning-Kei looked at Master Chishan and said respectfully, "Master, you have been sick for a long time, so you can naturally cure people." Master Chishan looked at Ning-Kei and said with a smile, "Mr. 13 is indeed an interesting person. I heard that you were extremely tough at the foot of the mountain today, but I didn't expect you to be so gentle in front of the hut." Ning-Kei was extremely thick-skinned and said confidently, "When I was at the foot of the mountain, I was anxious to see you. Because I was anxious, 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 and because I was anxious, I lost my composure. Now that I have finally seen you, I deeply regret that I lost my composure. How can I go back to my old ways? 70 years ago, I once asked the headmaster of the academy, 'How can you call yourself a junior in front of me?' Master Chishan waved his hand and said, 'You and I can call each other senior and junior brother. When he said this, Ning Ke and the other cultivators didn't feel anything strange. However, Monk Guan Hai, who had been asked by Ning Ke to call him senior and junior brother, became even darker. He thought that the seniority was really messed up. Master Qishan looked at Sang Sang and asked with a smile, "Will you still play the third game?" Sang Sang slightly leaned forward to salute and answered, "Yes." If Master Dongming in the Autumn Pavilion had made her feel close, then this old monk in front of her not only made her feel close, but also very trustworthy. It was as if she had seen her teacher, so she behaved very politely. Sang Sang was a very transparent person. Whether others were kind or malicious to her, it was like light or darkness. It could directly show the true side of her heart, so she had never misjudged anyone. Seeing the trust in her subtle movements, Ning Ke gradually calmed down. Master Qishan asked again, "Do you represent the West Hill Divine Palace?" Or Sang Sang was the next great divine priest of light and had a very close relationship with the academy. That was why Master Qishan asked this question. Sang Sang was startled and answered, I represent my young master?" In the past few years, she had gotten used to calling Ning Ke young master. Others didn't know this habit of hers. Today, on Tile Mountain, those cultivators heard it for the first time. They couldn't help but be shocked and speechless. They thought that the Lady of Light actually called someone else young master? Many people looked at Ning Ke with complicated expressions. They couldn't tell if they were envious or jealous. And those cultivators who had been loyal to the West Hill Divine Palace for thousands of years even vaguely showed anger. Master Qishan listened to this answer and nodded slightly. He said, "Then you represent the academy." Sang Sang thought for a while and said, "It seems so." Master Qishan looked at Ning Ke and asked with a smile, "You are treated as a young master by the Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace. Didn't Mr. Second say that it was against etiquette and didn't punish you with the academy rules?" Ning Ke said with a smile, "My wife is used to calling me that. As for second brother, the headmaster and eldest brother are both back, so I'm not afraid of him." Master Qishan laughed, but it affected his old illness and he coughed repeatedly. Monk Guan Hai hurriedly took out a pill and helped him swallow it. Master Qishan walked to the rattan next to the stone platform and sat beside a chessboard. He said, "Although I am here to cure my illness, we still need to play chess since we set such a boring rule." After a few conversations, Ning Ke confirmed that the relationship between the master and the academy was very close. He felt more relaxed and emboldened. He asked tentatively, "If I lose, can I still see her?" The master said, "Buddha is merciful. The 3 games of chess on Hua Mountain pick the fated ones. Since this little girl is sick, and I have some superficial medical skills, this is fate. How can I not see her?" Ning Ke was very happy and said casually, "This is the master's mercy, not the Buddha's mercy. Nowadays, there are 2 sects of Buddhism and Taoism, thousands of Taoist temples, and hundreds of Buddhist temples. Who still remembers these 2 words?" Master Qishan sighed and said, "If you are too close to the light, you can't see anything else. If you are too far away from the Buddha, you can't see the Buddha himself. Just like the Buddha statue on top of Hua Mountain. It is so huge, and I don't know how many people have spent on it. However, when you walk in front of the Buddha statue, you can only see a little finger at most." There was a deep meaning in his words. Monk Guan Hai and the monks of Lank Temple looked solemn and listened quietly. The monks from Yueluan Kingdom's White Tower Temple also listened carefully. Only Cuny Matty showed a slightly mocking expression, thinking that the old monk was deliberately mystifying. Master Qishan was such a person that he naturally wouldn't care about this old woman. He looked up at the huge Buddha statue above the hut that seemed to be able to break the sky. He said with emotion, before the Buddha's nirvana, he had left a Dharma decree that Taoism should not erect statues and worship. However, thousands of years have passed. How many Buddhist disciples still remember these words? Which Buddhist temple doesn't have a golden statue of the Buddha in the main hall? Back then, the juniors in Lank Temple insisted on erecting one, and they wanted to erect such a tall one. I couldn't stop them, so I had to move the hut under the Buddha's feet. I thought that if the Buddha was unhappy one day, he could step on my feet to vent his anger. Monk Guan Hai seemed to have understood something. The monks of Lank Temple suddenly became serious, and the abbot looked even more terrified. At this moment, in the Buddhist chariot that had been quiet for a whole day, the deep voice sounded again. The president of Commandment Yard from Xiankong Temple praised, "It has been 50 years since we last met. Uncle's Dharma has become more and more exquisite. Congratulations." Master Qishan shook his head and said, "I left the temple when I was young and returned to the world of mortals. I have never signed my name in the secretary's office or the lecture hall. How can I deserve to be called uncle by the president?" The monk in the Buddhist chariot didn't say anything, but insisted on bowing. Master Qishan acted as if he didn't see it. He looked at Sang Sang and asked, "Little girl, are you hungry?" At noon in the temple, Sang Sang only ate some vegetables. After playing chess in the autumn pavilion, not only was she not tired, but she became more energetic. She began to feel a little hungry, so she nodded. Master Qishan took out a green pear from somewhere and wiped it with his cotton sleeve. Then he handed it to Sang Sang and said lovingly, "Eat a pear first to fill your stomach. Thank you very much for your monthly votes for the Vermilion Bird novel during the Qing New Year. There are 3 chapters today. This is the first chapter. I will try to finish the next chapter before midnight. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 566. Sang Sang took the green pear and lowered her head to eat it. She found that the pear was very sweet and juicy. The strangest thing was that it had a strange texture, as if it melted in her mouth. She could not help but be stunned. She raised her head and handed the remaining half of the pear to Ningquebec. She said, "Try it. It's very sweet." Ever since they were young, the two of them were used to sharing any delicious food. Ning Ke did not care about the saying of sharing pears. He took the green pear and swallowed it in a few bites. Master Qishan did not expect that they would even have to share an ordinary green pear. He could not help but be stunned. Then he shook his head and said, "Let's begin." Sang Sang still chose the black chess piece. Under the rattan corridor in front of the hut, the chessboard was made of some unknown material. It looked like iron and gave off a cold and hard feeling. But when the chess piece landed on it, there was no sound. Just as Sang Sang's fingertips left the black chess piece, something strange happened. Her eyes suddenly became a little confused, and then she slowly closed her eyes. Her eyelashes did not even blink. It was as if she had fallen asleep just like that. Ning Ke's pupils shrank slightly. Every hair on his body stood on end. The cool autumn wind passed through his hair, stimulating his mind like ice. He stared into Master Qishan's eyes. The fingers of his right hand gradually closed, forming a fist in the air. It was just enough to fit the hilt of a knife. His little finger trembled at a very high speed, ready to pull out the padao behind him at any time. "Don't be nervous," Master Qishan said. "She is just tired, so she went to sleep for a while in her dream." Ning Ke sensed Sang Sang's condition and found that her breathing was very calm, even calmer than usual. Other than that, there was nothing strange. It seemed that she was really just asleep. "What's going on?" he asked coldly. Master Qishan smiled and said, "This is good for her body." Sang Sang, who had mysteriously fallen asleep, seemed to be really comfortable. Her eyebrows, which were often frowned because of pain, were very relaxed and she did not cough. Ning Ke put his hand on her wrist and found that the cold aura in her body had also become very calm. It was not as restless as usual, so he was slightly relieved. But he could not completely relax. He stared into Master Qishan's eyes and asked again, "What is going on?" Master Qishan looked at the chessboard in front of him and said, "You should have heard of the legend of the Lank Temple. The chessboard you are looking at now is the one used by the old monks in the legend. Ning Ke asked, Who left this chessboard? Master Chishan said, Buddha. Thinking of the legend, Ning Ke suddenly felt nervous. Why did Sang Sang use this chessboard to play chess? I just found out that Master Dongming presided over the final game of the 3 games of chess on the Hua Mountain. He definitely didn't use this chessboard. Master Chishan said, Just take it as a test from Buddha. Ning Ke said, We are here to cure diseases, not to pray to Buddha. Why do we need to be tested by Buddha? Master Chishan said, If only Buddha can cure her illness, will you beg or not? After a long silence, Ning Ke asked, Is she in danger? Master Chishan said, There is no danger. Ning Ke suddenly thought of a possibility and said in a hoarse voice, But she will suffer a lot. Master Chishan said, If she is in pain, you will feel it. Ning Ke asked, Then what should we do next? Should we continue? Master Chishan looked at the lonely black chess piece on the chessboard. He took out a white chess piece from the urn beside him and gently placed it opposite the black chess piece. He said, This game has begun. As time passed, the autumn sun gradually moved to the west. The Hua Mountain cave was shrouded in a tense and mysterious atmosphere. No one knew what happened on the chessboard and why Sang Sang fell asleep as soon as she put down one piece. Ning Ke almost lost his patience several times. But thinking of the respect and trust Sang Sang showed to Master Chishan before placing the chess piece, he suppressed his uneasiness and continued to wait in silence. There were still only 2 chess pieces on the chessboard. Ning Ke did not look at the chessboard, but at Sang Sang's face. He paid attention to whether she showed any expression of pain, whether there was any change in her breathing, and whether there was any abnormality in her body. He looked very carefully and attentively without blinking. He did not miss the slight tremble of Sang Sang's eyelashes, even though those trembles were caused by the autumn wind in the mountains. Emo Shanshan stood outside the hut and quietly looked at Ning Ke's expression. She also looked very carefully and attentively. On the stone bench beside the mountain path, the crown prince of the South Jin Kingdom stared at Emo Shanshan's beautiful side profile. His expression was focused, occasionally showing infatuation and sadness. If the world was a big chessboard, and everyone was a chess piece on the chessboard, then no one would be able to escape. Everyone had to be the one they wanted to see, unless they no longer had any attachment to this world. The flower addict, Lu Chenjia, looked at the people outside and outside the hut silently. A mocking smile suddenly flashed across her beautiful face. Then, she left the hut and returned to the foot of the Buddha statue at the top of the mountain. The Buddha statue was very tall. Even one of its toes was much bigger than her. Lu Chenjia stood on the pinky of the Buddha statue and gently tucked her flowing hair behind her ears. She looked up and was dazzled by the autumn sun in the west. She squinted her eyes. The Buddha's face was faintly discernible in the clouds, looking down at the foot of the mountain in silence. He was not looking at a specific individual, but at all the people struggling in the mortal world, so he appeared to be extremely merciful. Lu Chenjia looked for a long time before looking away. She saw a small white flower in a small crack at the foot of the Buddha statue. She bent down and plucked it. Sang Sang stood on a mountain in a daze. There was a small town at the foot of the mountain. She could faintly hear the sound of children playing. She could see the water wheel by the stream outside the town. She could even smell the aroma of food at noon. She knew that this was not the real world, because in this world she did not have Ning Ke by her side. However, she could not confirm whether this world was the world on a chessboard, because she was looking at the world itself and not the chessboard. When she found herself standing on the mountain, it was late at night. When the smoke rose in the morning, she went down the mountain once and walked around the town. Then, she walked back up the mountain and found a tree. She continued to stare blankly. She was not prepared to leave, because she did not know if she could find her way back if she went too far. and if Ning Ke wanted to come to this world to find her, she should stand where she was and wait for him. When she was very young, Ning Ke would repeatedly remind her before he went out to hunt or do other things. No matter what happened, she should not leave where she was because he would not be able to find her if she did. At that time, Sang Sang would always confirm, "Will you definitely come back to find me?" Ning Ke said of course, so Sang Sang was relieved. She followed his instructions and stood where she was without moving. Sang Sang stood for a long time, so long that she finally forgot how long it had been. She only remembered that the sun had risen and set countless times, the rain, snow, frost, and wind had rotated countless times, and the firecrackers in the town had sounded many times. These people seemed to have a lot of happy things to do. Sang Sang thought that since Ning Ke had not found her after such a long time, she would not be happy to hear firecrackers. Time continued to pass, and Sang Sang was still waiting. Her feet were tired, so she sat down and rested for a while. When she was sleepy, she leaned against the tree for a while. There were 2 nests of ants under the tree. Sang Sang was a little bored while waiting for Ning Ke, so she began to watch the ants move or fight. She did not know how many times she watched. The members of the 2 nests had probably changed for hundreds of generations. Finally, she found something very interesting when the ants moved. The 2 nests crawled at the same speed, and the distance from the tree was exactly the same. But the place where the honey overflowed from the tree was different every time. Sometimes, one nest of ants could walk in a straight line, while the other nest of ants had to walk in a curve around the puddle. So the nest of ants that walked in a straight line could get the honey first. The straight line between 2 points was the shortest. Sang Sang silently thought that this was the rule that the world wanted to tell her. There were towns in this world, and there were people and mountains in the towns. There were beasts and trees in the mountains and birds in the trees. There was water, wind, clouds, day and night. Naturally, there were rules. Sang Sang did not go down the mountain, but because she had too much time to see and think, she gradually grasped many rules in this world. For example, the light was warm, and the night was cold. This kind of rule was very boring. Some of the rules were even more sad. In the town, firecrackers were not only set off for happy events, but also for funerals. Sang Sang stood on the mountain and watched the children in the town gradually grow old, become sick, and then die, disappearing with the firecrackers. The ashes of the firecrackers were rolled up by the wind, floating from the graveyard outside the town, and kept moving forward around the mountain until they gradually faded away. Sang Sang noticed that every time the wind came from the same place, the direction of the ashes was exactly the same, as if there was an arrow guiding it, always moving forward. She understood that this was the rule of time. Time kept moving forward, and no one could stop it. Sang Sang was still on the mountain. A woodcutter went up to the mountain to cut firewood, and a child went up to the mountain to herd sheep. For countless years, many people walked by the tree, but no one could see her. There were even 3 generations of cattle tied under the tree, but nothing could touch her. She really existed in this world. Apart from not being able to interact with this world, she was still bound by the rules of this world, so she would feel tired, cold, and hot. Of course, there were some rules that could not bind her. She had never eaten, but she had never been hungry. She remembered the legend of the Lank Temple that Ning Ke had once told her. The woodcutter named Wang Ji had eaten a steamed bun, so he had spent 100 years beside the chessboard under the tree, but he had never been hungry. Sang Sang did not eat the steamed bun, but she had just eaten a green pear. Then she understood something, walked to the edge of the cliff, and jumped down. Chapter 3. Come out before 2 o'clock. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 567. There was no dream in this world, only 100 years of length. Sang Sang remembered the legend and understood that she had probably encountered the same thing as the woodcutter. The only difference was that the woodcutter had wasted 100 years in the real world, while she had left the real world and come here. She did not know if this world was real, whether it was a dream or a spiritual illusion created by a powerful person. But now that she knew the truth, it was enough for her to deduce more things. Just as Ning Ke had said, she was a very smart girl. It was just that she was used to standing behind Ning Ke and was too lazy to use her brain. She let Ning Ke think about everything. This time, she was lazy for a little longer. She only began to think when she was sure that Ning Ke would not come to find her, or that he could not find her. The result of her thinking was that she was still in the chess game. But this time, her opponent was not Master Qishan, but the rules of the world itself. What she needed to do was to defeat these rules. Rules were the foundation of the world. The reason why the world could exist and why people could live was because of these rules. It seemed impossible to defeat rules in the rules. But Sangsang thought that she was not from this world. Even if she could not defeat the rules of this world, she should be able to find the similarities between the two worlds, which was the contradiction between the rules of the two worlds. Then she could use this contradiction to find a way to break the rules of this world, or a way to leave this world. Many people in the small town had died and the firecrackers had been set off many times. She was still alive and had not even grown up. The speed of time in this world and the real world was obviously different. It should be the opposite of the legend of Lank Temple. At the same time, it proved that the rules of time that worked on her were still outside the chessboard. The physical rules of the chessboard world and the rules of time in the real world worked on her at the same time. Then she was the connection between the rules of the two worlds, and she herself was the cause of the contradiction. Then if she died in this world, she could get rid of the other rules of this world and follow the rules of time in the real world to return outside the chessboard and wake up. So she walked to the edge of the cliff and jumped down. Then she fell heavily down the cliff. Her bones were all broken and she was in great pain. Her vision went black. Then she reappeared on the cliff, still standing under the tree, as if nothing had happened. Sangsang looked a little confused. She felt that something was wrong. If this game of chess was really progressing as she had deduced, then her choice should be correct. But why couldn't she die? There is no way to disappear from this world? She stood at the foot of the tree for a moment, then untied her belt and tied it to the tree. His neck hurt a little. The next moment she stood under the tree and stared blankly at the belt that had returned to her waist, thinking that she should choose another method. There was a lake not far from the tree. The lake water could also drown people. The lake failed to drown her. Over the next few days, Sangsang tried all kinds of ways to die, but none of them worked. She was still standing in the mountain. Other than the fear and pain in her memory, there was no sign that she had ever died. What exactly went wrong? Death was the only way to eternity. Eternity was the highest law that surpassed time. Since he couldn't even break the law of time, how could he break the highest law? While thinking silently, she forgot one thing. The highest law of death was broken, which meant that all the laws of this world would loosen, and then it would be on the verge of collapse. Gradually, the light began to turn cold, and the night began to warm up. The two nests of ants fighting for the honey under the tree vaguely walked around the rocks, and could even reach the honey one step ahead of their enemies. Time began to slow down, and the speed at which the people in the town aged slowed. For many years, there were no firecrackers for funerals, but no one was happy about it. Instead, they were especially afraid. The firecrackers for happy occasions gradually became fewer and fewer, until there were no firecrackers at all. The water wheel on the stream had long stopped turning, and the farmland became barren. The whole world was in chaos, and then it fell into silence. This was also why, whether it was the real world or the world in the chessboard, no eternal existence could be allowed except for eternity itself, because it would cause the whole world to be destroyed. The laws of this world finally noticed Sangsang on the mountain. The world shook uneasily, the fields rolled, the sea boiled, and the mountains toppled. The mountain beneath Sangsang shook violently, and she was thrown into the air. Countless laws turned into light balls and flew toward the sky, shining brightly. These light balls contained a milky white radiance, without any temperature, and looked like cold white chess pieces. Sang Sang floated in the air, looking at the bright chess pieces in confusion. She was like a lonely black chess piece. The next moment she would be swallowed by the light. It was dusk on Tile Mountain. The red and warm twilight shone on the face of the stone statue of Buddha, making it look particularly solemn. Buddha looked down at all the pain in the world, and seemed to be in pain as well. He wanted to frown. However, his eyebrows were lines carved by craftsmen between the boulders, as hard as steel. Thus, an extremely thin crack appeared between his eyebrows. In the cave in the shadow of Buddha, Sang Sang, who was beside the chessboard, suddenly frowned as if she was in pain. Ning Ke suddenly became nervous, and his right hand trembled slightly. After a moment, the painful expression on Sang Sang's face disappeared, and she became calm again. Ning Ke heaved a sigh of relief. Then, Sang Sang frowned again. She became calm again. This was repeated several times. All of a sudden, Sang Sang's face became extremely pale, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Her thin body trembled violently, and she seemed to be in great pain. One could even feel her fear in her sleep. Ning Ke had been extremely nervous, and he had long reached the limit of his endurance. At this time, seeing Sang Sang's abnormality, he did not hesitate to pull out the padao behind him, and slashed at the chessboard. Master Qishan said that this chessboard was left by Buddha, so it must be very precious. But at this moment, not to mention the chessboard left by Buddha, even if Buddha himself appeared in front of him, Ning Ke would also slash at him. It was not a joke for him to kill the Buddha in his way. Of course, Ning Ke was also very clear that the chessboard left by Buddha could not be destroyed so easily. During the previous process of waiting nervously, he had already made preparations. Therefore, he blasted out all the great spirit in his body through this slash, mixed with Haotian's divine light, and used Liu Bai's day sword skill. This was the strongest slash he could make. Smoke and dust rose, and there were spots of light. The padao was shaken back by the chessboard. The chessboard was safe. Sang Sang did not wake up. Ning Ke held the padao and fell asleep. Master Qishan's face became more and more haggard. He sighed and said, "What a pair of idiots!" The world was in chaos before the destruction. The surviving humans finally felt the fear of death. They drove their own carriages or robbed others' carriages and began to flee. They did not know whither they were to flee: from the floods that fell from the sky, from the peaks that rose from the waters of the lakes, from the heat of the night and the chill of the day, but they fled blindly and wildly. At a certain intersection, the fleeing crowd was forced to stop. A black carriage was blocking the intersection, and it knocked over several other carriages, making the already chaotic intersection even more chaotic. It was so blocked that no one could move. The black carriage was blocking the intersection. Those who wanted to escape to the south could not go south, and those who wanted to escape to the west could not go west. The crazy man who wanted to seek the last love in the end could not catch the disheveled girl across the street. The young man who crawled out from the pile of corpses could not hug his first love when he saw her. The people in the end of the world shouted angrily and cursed. Some people picked up mud and threw it at the black carriage. However, the young man in the black carriage did not seem to hear these voices. He let the mud hit his body and shook it into pieces. He still looked up at the sky in a daze. There were many white lights in the sky. He did not know what they represented, but he could feel the terrifying energy contained in them. He could even guess what they were going to do. The young man in the black carriage was Ning Quebec. He did not know how he came to this world, nor did he know why he could bring the big black horse and the carriage here. However, he felt very lucky when he thought that he could find Sang Sang in this world. It was very difficult to find a person in the chaotic end of the world. Ning Ke had been looking for Sang Sang for a long time, but he had not found her. Today, he finally looked up at the sky. he shouted to the big black horse. The big black horse neighed and raised its 4 hooves, driving the carriage made of iron and steel. It crushed the carriages and the crowd in front of it, leaving a trail of blood and debris in its wake as it made a bloody path among the fleeing crowd. The black carriage chased after the light. A few days later, the black carriage came under Sang Sang. Ning-Ke looked up at Sang Sang in the sky. Countless light rays were passing through Sang Sang's transparent body. The light rays did not have any temperature. However, there were so many that the light rays inevitably rubbed against each other. The speed of the light rays was very fast, and the friction between them was terrible. It could produce a terrifying high temperature. Sang Sang's body had already begun to burn. Ning-Ke shouted, "Sang Sang." Sang Sang did not seem to hear him. She did not look down at the ground. Ning-Ke shouted again, "Sang Sang." Sang Sang heard him this time. She looked at him and cried, "I don't know what's wrong." Ning-Ke said, "Don't be afraid. Come to me." Sang Sang shook her head and looked at the light around her. She said, "You will die." Ning-Ke said, "I said that if you die, I will die too. Why don't we die together?" Sang Sang thought it made sense, so she landed. Those pure white balls of light followed her and fell to the ground. Ning-Ke took out the big black umbrella and handed it to Sang Sang. Sang Sang opened the big black umbrella, as if opening up a piece of night. The night covered her, Ning-Ke, and the black carriage. The rules of this world could no longer find them. They disappeared from this world. Ning-Ke and Sang Sang woke up at the same time. They found themselves still in Hua Mountain. Outside the cave, by the chessboard, there were only 2 chess pieces on the chessboard. One was black, and the other was white. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 568. It was extremely quiet beside the chessboard. Master Qishan looked at Sang Sang quietly. His thin face showed a complicated expression. There was shock after seeing the truth, and even a faint fear, but it all turned into confusion in the end. Ning-Ke was nervously checking on Sang Sang's condition and did not notice the strange expression on the master's face. Otherwise, he might have noticed something. Then he heard the master sigh. He looked up nervously. Master Qishan's expression had returned to normal. He showed a kind smile, as if he had been freed from some great terror. He was satisfied and calm. The 3 games of Tile Mountain have a long history, but the game you just experienced has only happened 5 times. Little girl, you are the second person to solve all 3 games in a row. Master Qishan looked at Sang Sang and said gently. After confirming that Sang Sang was fine and that the world in the chessboard was just an illusion, Ning-Ke calmed down. He listened to the master's praise and asked, "Who was the person who solved all 3 games in a row?" Master Qishan said a name that had disappeared from the world for many years, but Ning-Ke was very familiar with it. He looked into Ning-Ke's eyes and said with a smile, "It was Junior Brother Lotus." The master's eyes were calm and did not show any power. However, Ning-Ke felt that his eyes had seen through all his disguises and the fragments of consciousness in the depths of his sense of perception. He felt a little uneasy. He subconsciously lowered his head to avoid eye contact with the master. To hide his uneasiness, he continued to ask, "Who were the other 3 people who played on this chessboard?" Master Qishan said, "The headmaster, Mr. Ku, and the Abbey Dean." Hearing these 3 names, Ning-Ke immediately forgot his previous uneasiness and looked up in surprise. In his opinion, the headmaster, youngest uncle, and the Abbey Dean of Jisho Abbey were the top figures in the world. No matter how powerful Lotus and Sang Sang were, they could not surpass them. How could the headmaster not be able to solve this game? Master Qishan said, "This game could not trap them at all. Why would they need to solve it?" Ning-Ke's question was to shift the topic away from Lotus and prevent the master from seeing through his secrets. Since it worked, he would not continue. He looked at the master and asked, "Sang Sang has solved the game. Can she be treated? Master Chishan said, even if we can't solve the puzzle, we still have to see him. Moreover, we have already solved the puzzle, so there is no reason not to see him. Ning Kei's voice was a little hoarse because of nervousness. Can it be cured? Master Chishan, who was already very weak, looked even more haggard, perhaps because he had used up too much energy hosting the last game of chess. Hearing Ning Kei's concerned question, he coughed painfully a few times and then lowered his head tiredly, remaining silent for a long time. Ning Kei became more and more nervous when he did not hear the answer. After a long time, Master Chishan raised his head and looked at Sang Sang lovingly. He said, "There is no disease in the world that cannot be cured, but it will be very difficult and painful to cure." Sang Sang glanced at Ning Kei and said calmly and firmly, "I'm not afraid of hardship." In fact, she was not afraid of death, but she did not want to die. That was because she knew that if she died, Ning Kei would be very sad and he might even die with her. So she wanted to live. No matter what kind of pain she had to endure, she had to survive. That was why her answer was so resolute. Master Chishan looked at her and smiled. He said resolutely, "Then I will definitely cure you." Upon hearing this, Ning Kei suddenly felt a buzzing sound in his head. He could no longer hear anything else. His body seemed to have turned from a cliff into a drifting cloud. He fell onto the futon and could not speak at all. Almost at the same time, the nervous and closed pores on the surface of his body suddenly opened. Countless cold sweat flowed out, instantly drenching his black academy uniform. He looked like he had just been drenched in a heavy rain. Over the years, he looked calm as usual. No matter when he talked to people or did things, there was nothing strange. But in fact, because of Song Song's illness, he had long been extremely anxious and afraid. After hearing Grandmaster's affirmation, those negative emotions that had accumulated for a very long time, accompanied by that ice-cold sweat, were released in an extremely short time. His body and mind were controlled by an extremely joyous mood, unexpectedly having a feeling of floating like an immortal. But at the same time, this kind of rapid change and release of mood also made his body and mind suffer an extremely violent impact, immediately becoming incomparably weak, like a patient who had just recovered from a serious illness. Master Chishan looked at him and guessed that he must have experienced unimaginable suffering and pain recently. He comforted him kindly. "This is something to be happy about." Sang Sang took out a handkerchief and gently wiped the rain-like sweat off Ning Kei's face. Ning Kei smiled with difficulty and said, "It is indeed something to be happy about." Master Chishan looked at the cultivators who had come to visit outside the cave and said, "Since it is something to be happy about, then we should celebrate it. I will answer each of your questions." Hearing this, Ning Kei suddenly became energetic. He sat up straight and stared into the master's eyes. He reminded him very seriously, "We were here first, master, you have to cure us first." Master Chishan laughed and said, "It is not so easy to cure a disease. Otherwise, why would you leave the academy to find an old monk like me? You should at least let me be prepared." Ning Kei still did not agree and said, "The longer we delay, the more dangerous it is." Master Chishan said, "It is not that time yet, so there is no danger. Don't worry." The first half of this sentence seemed to have a hidden meaning. When was that time? However, at this moment, Ning Kei could only hear certain words like, "Don't worry," and "definitely." He did not pay attention to those at all. Hearing that Master Chishan would answer everyone's questions today, the cultivators inside and outside the cave were overjoyed. Only Monk Guan Hai showed a shocked expression. He was very worried about his teacher's health. It was unknown when the flower addict had returned from the Buddha statue at the top of the mountain. She heard the last part of the conversation and knew that Song Song's illness could be cured. Her expression was still indifferent, but her fingers slightly tightened and broke the little flower again. It was already late at night. The foothills behind Hua Mountain were dark as if it was already late at night. The cultivators silently lined up outside the hut, waiting to enter later. The monks of the Lank temple lit torches outside the hut. The dim flames fluttered restlessly in the mountain wind, illuminating the people's expressions, just like their complicated feelings at the moment. In the legends of the world, Master Chishan had a precognitive ability similar to or even better than the great divine priest of revelation of the West Hill Divine Palace. He could answer all questions in the world, just like Buddha. It was every cultivator's dream to be able to get Master Chishan's advice. Thinking about the obstacles on the path of cultivation, the problems that they could not solve for a long time, and the people or things that had troubled them for many years, they could all be solved by Master Chishan's advice. They were naturally excited and uneasy. What could make a cultivator use up a chance to ask a question was definitely their greatest confusion or their greatest pain. However, the greatest confusion and pain of human beings were often their greatest secret. This also meant that they would have to tell Master Chishan these secrets later, so they were a little afraid. Master Chishan's painful coughs could be heard from time to time in the ivy-covered cliff cave. No one knew when the black horse carriage had entered the hut. Sang Sang was wearing a fur coat and snuggled in the quilt. She was no longer cold, but when she heard the master's coughs, she could not help but cough painfully, and her face became paler. Ning Kei, who was sitting by the window, lifted the curtain and looked at the cliff cave. He complained in a low voice, "You know that coughs are contagious, but you don't tell me to bear with it." This was another deliberate joke. This time, Sang Sang did not laugh out loud for Ning Kei's sake. Instead, she said worriedly, "The master's illness seems to have worsened." Ning Kei was speechless. Although Master Chishan had been ill for a long time and was thin and haggard, he was not as weak as he was now when they first met. What had suddenly made the master's illness worse? Of course, it was the chess game. The Buddhism sect emphasized on equality, but in reality, it was impossible to achieve absolute equality. For example, during the Yulan Hungry Ghost Festival, ordinary people did not even have the chance to enter the Hua Mountain, so how could they meet Master Chishan? How could they have the chance to compete with the cultivators to become the destined one? Even those who came to visit the mountain today could not achieve equality. Master Chishan did not arrange the order of entering the cave, so this matter was decided by the abbot of the Lank Temple. Other than the West Hill Divine Palace and the Academy, most cultivators in the world still did not dare to go against the imperial power. The South Jin Kingdom was only second to the Tang Empire, so the Crown Prince of the South Jin Kingdom was naturally ranked first. The Crown Prince of the South Jin Kingdom did not stay in the cave for long before he came out. People did not know what question he had asked, whether it was about the calligraphy addict or the future of the South Jin Kingdom. But looking at his confused expression, they could vaguely guess that his answer was not good, but it was not bad either. It was even possible that he could not understand it for the time being. Cuny Matti had a high status in the cultivation world and was also the imperial aunt of the Ueluan Kingdom. As such, she was the second to enter the cave. The cliff cave was very clean and the furnishings were very simple. There was only a futon, a straw mat, 2 quilts, and some daily necessities. Master Chishan sat on the futon. Cuny Matti looked at the master. She was not as devout and respectful as other cultivators. Instead, she did not hide the hatred and mockery in her eyes. He looked at her and said quietly, "That year, you insisted on coming to the Hua Mountain to see me. I had been in seclusion for many years, but I had no choice but to make an exception and write you a letter. Now it seems that I was wrong." "You were wrong all along," Cuny Matti said hatefully. "In the entire Buddhism sect, you are my only elder. Back then, I came to ask you for guidance and asked if I should give birth to the child in my belly. In the end, you said yes, so I gave birth to the child. Then, we separated for decades and we mourned the death of the child. Of course you were wrong." Master Chishan sighed and said, "Even though the child was still in your belly, he was already a human. Buddhism is merciful. How could you have the heart to kill him? Moreover, the child was fated with Buddha. Kunimati said sternly, You could tell that my child was fated with Buddha, but why couldn't you tell that he would be killed in Chang'an? Since you couldn't tell, you shouldn't have left that letter for me. Master Chishan said, It's all in the past, so it's useless to talk about it. What I don't understand is why you came to see me today, even though you have always held such a huge grudge against me. Kunimati gasped in pain and gradually calmed down. She stared into the master's eyes and said hatefully, You made a mistake once, so I want you to do it again. Master Chishan's expression changed slightly. He said, What else do you want to know? Kunimati said hatefully, I want to know when Ning Ke will die. Master Chishan shook his head and said, Even Buddha can't predict life and death, let alone an ordinary person like me. Kunimati said angrily, Then you have to tell me how I can avenge my son. Master Chishan suddenly looked out of the cave and thought of the Buddhist chariot that came from the Xiankong temple. After a long silence, he said, Since you have already made arrangements, why do you still ask me? Then he looked at Kunimati quietly and said, But I have to remind you that you have been practicing Buddhism for decades, but you still can't get rid of the pain of resentment. You can't blame anyone else. You can't blame the person on the Buddhist chariot, the person in the Yueluan palace, or the child in your belly. You have to ask yourself. You hate that thing the most now. If it weren't for you in the wilderness, Ning Ke wouldn't have humiliated you in the palace, and Daosher wouldn't have returned to Yueluan or Chang, to be killed by Ning Quebec. If you want to take revenge, who will you take revenge on? Ning Ke or yourself? Master Chishan looked at her and said with pity. Kunimati was even more resentful when she heard this. Her body trembled slightly, and the veins on her right hand that was holding the wooden staff were visible. She said sternly, If you don't want to answer, then don't. Why do you have to be so mysterious in front of me again? Uncle Chishan, you are not the real Buddha. How dare you act like the Buddha and grant all his requests? One day you will die a violent death. Master Chishan said, I am in this world, but I have been dreaming of the Buddhist kingdom. I just want people to have less trouble. If I had known that I would suffer karma, I would have died a violent death. What's the difference between dying a violent death or dying of old age? The flower addict Lu Chenjia did not enter the cave. She only looked at the cultivators quietly. Her eyes were extremely indifferent. Now that she had no attachment to this world, she naturally had no doubts. Naturally, she did not need to enter the cave to ask for the master's help. However, the cultivators each had their doubts, so they entered the cave one by one. Everyone did not stay for long, but when they came out they all looked very satisfied. However, no one said what they had asked. Logically speaking, Mo Shanshan should have entered the cave very early. However, she did not compete with the cultivators, or perhaps she was thinking about what she should ask. That was why she only entered the cave last. She sat on the futon in silence, not knowing what to ask. After a long time, she said embarrassedly, I really can't think of anything to ask. As the calligraphy addict of the world, she entered the knowing destiny state at a young age and became a divine talisman master. She was protected by the master of calligrapher and respected by her peers. Mo Shanshan did not seem to have any regrets in her life. Master Chishan looked at her lovingly and said, Since you have come to the Hua Mountain, you must have had some questions in the beginning. Questions always need an answer. Mo Shanshan thought of the black horse carriage, and said with a smile, At the beginning, there was indeed a question and I wanted to ask the master to solve it. But now there is an answer to that question. Master Chishan said, That's good. Mo Shanshan stood up and bowed to the master respectfully. Then, she walked out of the cave. She suddenly stopped at the entrance and turned around to ask, Master, there is a saying in Buddhism about reincarnation. Is there really an afterlife? She suddenly smiled and said, I am just asking casually. You don't have to answer. Master Chishan did not answer and also smiled. There are 4 chapters today. This is the first chapter, 4,400 words. The second chapter will be out before 8 o'clock. Monthly votes are in short supply. Please support me. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 569. It was quiet at the peak of Tile Mountain. Silver starlight shone on the mountain, as if it was gilding the huge stone Buddha with a faint and merciful luster. A few strands of clouds floated past the Buddha statue, and faint nocturnal bird cries could be heard. The Buddhist chariot stopped outside the cave. It was illuminated by the starlight, and the Buddhist mantras embroidered on the curtains seemed to be shining. As the night wind blew, the Buddhist mantras seemed to come alive, looking even more solemn and beautiful. Cuny Matti walked to the Buddhist chariot and said something in a low voice. The monk in the chariot seemed to shake his head. Cuny Matti led the sadhu of the White Tower Temple down the mountain. The flower addict was among them. The cultivators who came out of the cave were either confused or excited. It took them a long time to digest Master Chishan's words and wake up. They kowtowed to the depths of the cave, then to the Buddhist chariot, then to the black horse carriage, and then to the foot of the mountain. The cultivators gradually left, disappearing into the night of Tile Mountain. Just like a game of chess, the black and white chess pieces were all picked up, leaving only a clean chessboard. Mo Shanshan walked to the black horse carriage and said, "Bring Sang Sang in. I live in the Lank Temple, and need to go down the mountain. I won't wait for you." Ning Ke said, "Do you want to go down the mountain together?" Mo Shanshan said, "It's enough to go up the mountain together. There's no need to go down together." After saying this, she floated away. Ning Ke was silent for a while and stopped thinking about it. He helped Sang Sang out of the black horse carriage and looked at the lonely Buddhist chariot outside the hut. He frowned and walked into the cave. Master Chishan stretched out 2 fingers and placed them on Sang Sang's wrist. The master had been ill for a long time and was weak. His fingers were as thin as dry branches. Sang Sang had been ill for a long time and was weak. Her wrist was as thin as a reed. Occasionally, the night wind would leak into the cave and shake the oil lamp. The master felt cold and could not help but cough violently. His body trembled and spread from his fingers to Sang Sang's wrist. Sang Sang could not help but cough too. Looking at this scene, Ning Ke wanted to laugh, but he also felt sad. Master Chishan and Sang Sang were in a better mood. They looked at each other and laughed. Such a cold aura, as if it came from the abyss. Master Chishan's fingers slowly left Sang Sang's wrist and he sighed. Ning Ke looked at Grandmaster, his expression unreadable, only his tightly clenched fists showing how nervous he was. Master Chishan ignored him. He looked at Sang Sang and said lovingly, "When the cold aura breaks out, it must be extremely painful. I don't know how you survived for so many years, especially when you were young." Sang Sang glanced at Ning Quebec. Ning Ke thought of Sang Sang's illness when she was young. Even though it had been more than 10 years, he still felt cold all over. He shook his head and drove those images out of his mind. "Master, how can I get rid of this cold in chi?" Ning Ke did not ask what this cold in chi was because it was meaningless. It had already existed in Sang Sang's body for so many years. He did not ask the master if he could get rid of this cold in chi, but directly asked for the method. If he wanted to cure Sang Sang's illness, he had to get rid of this cold in chi. Since Master Chishan said that he could cure Sang Sang's illness, there must be a way. Master Chishan shook his head slowly and said, "I don't know where this cold in chi came from, but it went deep. It has accompanied Sang Sang for 16 years, and it has long penetrated into her bones and flesh. It is difficult to separate. If not for the Academy's excellent medicine, her cultivation of divine skills from the great divine priest of light, and the fact that you asked the great divine priest of judgment to suppress it forcefully, she would not have survived until now. How can it be so easy to get rid of? Ning Ke said, even the most poisonous things in the world have a corresponding antidote. I don't understand. Since it is a cold yin qi, why can't it be neutralized with a pure yang qi? Master Qishan said, I understand what you mean. In the past few years, this cold yin qi has been suppressed by the Haotian divine light. But when the Haotian divine light entered Song Song's body, the cold yin qi would hide in the abyss again, deep into her bones and flesh. If we want to get rid of the cold yin qi hidden in the deepest part of her bones and flesh, we need to remove all of her bones and flesh. Ning Ke thought that this was not a world of legends after all. How could he remove her flesh and bones and then rebuild her body with lotuses and lotus root? He frowned and said, the Haotian divine light is the purest fire in the world. Even if the cold yin qi can hide in the depths of her bones, it should not be able to escape. Master Qishan looked at Sang Sang and sighed. This is from Song Song's body. Ning Ke's expression turned serious. He said, please enlighten me, Master. Master Qishan raised his arm and pointed at Sang Sang. He said, she is transparent. Sang Sang was stunned. She remembered that her teacher had said the same thing when he first entered the old brush pen shop. Ning Ke did not understand what the master meant. Master Qishan said, why did the great divine priest of light choose Sang Sang as his successor? It is because of her special physique that she is transparent without any impurities. That is why the Haotian divine light can pass through her body without any obstruction or loss. That is why she can contain infinite divine light, the purest kind. Ning Ke said nervously, isn't this a good thing? It is a good thing and a bad thing. If there is no cold yin qi in her body and only light. Master Qishan looked at Sang Sang quietly and said, the Buddhism sect often says that a flower is a world. You are the flower called the boundless world. You are transparent and infinite. Those who can contain all the light can also contain all the darkness. Ning Ke vaguely understood what the master meant. Cultivators paid attention to their innate talent. For example, when they first got enlightenment, they saw a lake, a stream, or a pond. Some people like Lu Bai could see a surging river, but Sang Sang did not need to see at all. She was a world. That world was huge and almost infinite. That was why no matter how much Haotian divine light was poured into her body, it could not completely occupy every corner of this space. The cold yin qi could always find its own abyss and wait for the moment to see the light of day again. Then what should we do? Ning Ke's voice trembled slightly. He finally understood why even his teacher could not do anything about Song Song's illness. He could not help but feel a little desperate. He could not think of any other way. Master Qishan looked at him and asked calmly, are you willing to let Sang Sang follow me to Buddhism? Ning Ke was slightly shocked. He did not understand why the master suddenly mentioned this. Sang Sang did not understand either. She was very worried about Ning Ke's reaction. Little Carl, I'm a little late. I'm sorry. Chapter 3 will be out before 10:30. If you like this work, please come to Qidien. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 570. Hearing that Master Qishan wanted Sang Sang to study Buddhism with him, Ning Ke did not have much of a reaction other than being a little surprised. But in fact, there were many waves in his heart. Let Sang Sang cultivate Buddhism? Would she have to recite scriptures in the temple and be a vegetarian for the rest of her life after she recovered? My Song Song's hair is yellow and wilted, and she is not qualified to say that she has 3,000 strands of black hair. But it is not appropriate to cut it all off, right? Ning Ke naturally had these thoughts. Then he thought of second brother's evaluation of the world's religions and felt that there was something wrong with Master Qishan's suggestion. Both the Taoist and Buddhist sects loved to use fear to suppress people's rationality, then promise a beautiful future to tempt people's idiocy, so that people would listen to their words and not dare to doubt them. Master Chishan first described the cold aura in Song Song's body to be so terrifying. Just when Ning Ke was about to lose hope, he suddenly said that he wanted Sang Sang to cultivate Buddhism. He was really like those Taoist priests and monks in Taoist temples who persuaded old ladies to donate money. Was the master going to poach people from the academy and the divine hall? Ning Ke's expression froze, but he felt that he was thinking too much. The master did not look like such a person. Besides, Song Song's health was important and the master represented her last hope. He had to respect him. So he took a deep breath and tried to ask calmly, "Why do you want Sang Sang to cultivate Buddhism?" Master Chishan did not expect that his suggestion would make Ning Ke think so much in such a short period of time. He said kindly, "It is said that Buddhism is about saving all living beings. Actually, this is absurd. Even before Buddha passed away, he could not do it. Any Buddha who says that he wants to save all living beings is a fake Buddha, because this is a delusion. The so-called cultivation of Buddhism is only to cultivate oneself, to seek the liberation of one's own body and spirit." Ning Ke said, "I have read 2 Buddhist scriptures in the back of the mountain of the academy and know some of the principles of cultivating Buddhism. Master, you don't have to go into so much detail. I just want to know what this has to do with Song Song's illness." Master Chishan said, "Sang Sang is a boundless world. Light naturally cannot expel or destroy the cold aura in her body. But Buddhism is different. Buddhism does not seek suppression, but liberation. It will not arouse the hostility of the cold aura, and can even let the cold aura be enlightened in front of Buddha and liberate itself." Ning Ke was stunned for a long time after listening to this whimsical but somewhat reasonable words. Then he asked in confusion, "What state does one need to cultivate Buddhism to liberate herself from the cold aura?" Master Chishan took off a string of beads from his wrist and placed it on the ground in front of the futon, and said calmly, "If she can become a Buddha, she will be liberated." Ning Ke said bitterly, "Master, you must be joking. For countless years, only the Buddha became a Buddha sitting on the ground. Even if Sang Sang is really destined to be a Buddha, how could she cultivate to that state?" Master Chishan smiled and said, "When she was a dying baby girl, did you ever think that one day she would become the Lady of Light of the West Hill Divine Palace? Why are you so sure that she can't become a Buddha?" Ning Ke said, "Even if Sang Sang is the greatest cultivator in tens of thousands of years, Master, to become a Buddha is not something that can be achieved in a short period of time. There is not enough time." Master Chishan asked, "Can you think of a better way?" Ning Ke was stunned and said, "No." Master Chishan said, "Then, cultivating Buddhism is the only way to cure her." The only way was the best way. This was a principle that all the disciples of the academy understood very well. Ning Ke naturally understood it too. Thinking that Song Song's illness could relapse at any time, and time was precious, he made a decision without thinking for a long time. And before he said his decision, he did not forget one very important thing. He looked at Master Chishan and asked seriously, "Does Sang Sang need to shave her head and become a nun?" Of course, she can be a nun for a few years in order to cure her illness. But if she is really cured in the future, will your Buddhism sect stop her from returning to the secular world and make her sit on the lotus seat to be worshipped by those monks? Master Chishan looked at him blankly. He was surprised that this was the question that Ning Ke was most concerned about. He sighed and said, "She can cultivate at home and become a monk. Of course, there is no need for her to shave her head and become a nun. As long as Sang Sang did not become a hateful old nun like Kunimati, Ning Ke was willing to pay any price to cure her illness." Hearing this, he immediately felt relieved and said without hesitation, "Master, please." "What for?" Of course, it was not to sit, but to ask Master Chishan to teach Sang Sang Buddhism. Although there were many Buddhist scriptures in the back of the mountain of the academy, Ning Ke knew that since his teacher had asked him to bring Sang Sang to the Lank Temple, then only Master Qishan could be Song Song's teacher. Sang Sang had a tacit understanding with him. Hearing this, she knelt on the futon and bowed to Master Qishan. Master Qishan laughed heartily and said, "I can't believe that I have the opportunity to accept such an amazing disciple in my dying years. Buddhism forbids anger, obsession, and greed. But thinking that my name might be recorded in the Buddhist scriptures because of this disciple and be passed down for thousands of generations, my Zen heart that has long been undisturbed by external things is actually a little excited." Ning Ke was in a good mood and said, Guanhai was robbed of his position as the last disciple, or even more excited and annoyed. Master Qishan said with a smile, "I really don't know how the headmaster of the academy accepted such a naughty disciple like you." Ning Ke laughed and said, "My teacher often gets angry at me and can't do anything to me." The laughter gradually stopped and the cave became quiet again. Master Qishan looked at Sang Sang and said, "Many years ago, the great Zen master inherited the wisdom of Buddha and created his own view of impurity. He also obtained the Dharma of mind, which is what the Buddhism sect calls the Dharma of convenience." The master continued, "That Dharma of convenience is very simple to practice. If you feel disgusted, take a black stone and put it in front of you. If you feel good, put a white stone in front of you and gradually cultivate until the number of white stones and black chess pieces is equal. When your heart becomes pure, the black stones will gradually disappear and only white stones will be left in front of you." Sang Sang said, "I am willing to learn from you." Master Qishan smiled and shook his head. He said, "The so-called black and white are the chess pieces, and the so-called Dharma is the chess pieces. Arwa Mountain cultivates the way of black and white, but you have broken 3 games in a row. It shows that, as the divine priest of light said, your heart is pure and transparent. Why do you need to cultivate? What you need to cultivate is how to turn black stones into white stones." Sang Sang was a little confused and asked, "Black is black and white is white. How do I change it?" Master Qishan took out a black chess piece and placed it in the tiger mahogany bracelet. Then he looked at Sang Sang and said, "If you want it to be white, it can be white." Sang Sang looked at the black chess piece and suddenly felt that it was a little familiar. There were many black chess pieces in the urn, and they all looked very similar, almost exactly the same. But she could see even the slightest difference between the chess pieces. She remembered that this black chess piece was the one that she had placed on the chessboard in the afternoon. The 3rd chapter is sent to you 2,000 words. The next chapter is 4,000 words. Because the leader called for dinner, I did not have dinner today. The 4th chapter will be slightly later. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 571. Song Song's biggest wish in this life was to turn white. She did not want to turn the black chess piece into a white one, but to turn herself white. Looking at the black chess piece, she thought of Master Qishan's words and smiled embarrassedly. She thought that it would be great and convenient if she could be as white as she wanted without using the cosmetics of Chenjinji Cosmetics Store. No wonder Master Qishan called it the convenient Dharma. Master Qishan was slightly stunned. He did not understand why she was laughing. Was there something wrong with the convenient Dharma that she found out? Ning Ke was the only one in the world who could guess the real reason for Song Song's laughter. Looking at Song Song's bashful smile, he could not help but laugh too. In the dark and cold cave there was a relaxed smile, and then it gradually calmed down. Master Qishan's voice explaining Buddhism sounded from time to time, with Song Song's questioning voice occasionally. After some time, the lecture for the night came to an end. Master Qishan looked at Ning Ke and said, "Treating a disease is always a long process. The cave is damp and cold, not suitable for recuperation. Take her down the mountain to the temple to rest. If there is time before bed, let her think about what happened today." Ning Ke said, It is inconvenient to go up and down the mountain. Why don't we rest here? Master Chishan said, I will go down the mountain at night. I will meet you in the temple tomorrow morning. Ning Ke was slightly shocked. Everyone knew that Master Chishan had been living in seclusion in Hua Mountain for decades and did not even attend the Yulan Hungry Ghost Festival. Why did he say that he was leaving his seclusion tonight? Master Chishan said, This is probably the last time I will leave the hut. I have to go to the temple to feel at ease. After saying this, the master picked up the black chess piece from the ground in front of the futon and put it in Song Song's palm. Listening to the master's words, Ning Ke vaguely guessed something. He was shocked and grateful, but did not know what to say. He solemnly bowed, and then stood up to help Sang Sang walk out of the cave. When they reached the entrance, he said to Master Chishan, You must come. Master Chishan sighed helplessly and said, Don't worry, I will definitely come. Ning Ke was reluctant and said, Sang Sang is not cured yet. Don't die first. Master Chishan was so angry that he laughed. He scolded jokingly, How did you develop such a bad temper? Now I finally believe that the headmaster of the academy can't do anything to you even when he's angry at you. Ning Ke said with a smile, The headmaster likes my honesty and dotes on me, so he doesn't punish me. He walked out of the cave. Ning Ke carried Sang Sang into the carriage. Sang Sang leaned against the quilt and clenched her small fist, for fear that she would lose the black chess piece. She looked at Ning Ke and said gloomily, Master, is it bad? After a moment of silence, Ning Ke nodded and said, Don't think too much about it. It has nothing to do with you. Eminent monks of Buddhism have their own control of fate, not to mention a master who can predict the future. The night wind picked up and lifted a corner of the curtain. Ning Ke looked at the lonely Buddhist chariot beside the mountain path and frowned slightly. He did not know why the commandment chief monk of Xiankong Temple had been waiting outside the cave and why there was no one beside the Buddhist chariot. The sadhus of the White Tower Temple of Yueluan Kingdom had all been brought to the foot of the mountain by Kunimati. The monks of Lank Temple had already left. Monk Guan Hai had sent the black horse carriage down the mountain, and there was no one around the cave. The night wind blew through the autumn forest, making a rustling sound, but it did not disturb the birds. Vaguely, there seemed to be a clear and subtle ringing of a bell, but the ringing seemed to be unreal and disappeared in an instant. The Buddhist chariot outside the cave was still quiet. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the yellow curtain and lifted a gap. A monk wearing a dark brown robe walked out of the Buddhist chariot. The monk's eyebrows were straight like a ruler and his eyes were like gems. There were traces of hardship between his brows and there were wrinkles on his forehead. However, it was hard to tell his age. It was possible to say that he was in his 60s or 30s. This monk was the president of Commandment Yard of Xiankong Temple. The monk walked out of the Buddhist chariot and slowly walked into the cave. With the dim light, he looked at the tiger mahogany bracelet on the ground. He put his palms together and asked, Uncle, what did you see? Bushu, why do you ask? Master Chishan replied calmly. Master Bushu, president of Commandment Yard of Xiankong Temple, looked at Master Chishan quietly and said, A monk does not lie. Uncle, you played 3 games of chess on Hua Mountain today, especially the chessboard left behind by Buddha. Naturally, it was not to make things difficult for the sick girl, but to see if it was really that person. Master Chishan smiled and said, The great divine priest of revelation cannot see it. Back then, the great divine priest of light thought he saw it, but he was wrong. How can I see it? Did Wei Guangming really see it wrong? Master Bushu said indifferently, What if he did not see it wrong? What if the son of Yama was really born in the general's mansion? What if Ning Ke is really the son of Yama? Master Chishan shook his head and said, If Ning Ke is the son of Yama, why would the headmaster accept him as his disciple? Master Bushu shook his head and said, The headmaster is not an ordinary person and can do extraordinary things. It is not difficult to imagine that he would accept the son of Yama as his disciple. Master Chishan looked at him and said, "If things are really as you think, then it is meaningless for the Xiankong Temple and the Jisho Abbey to do anything." Bushu understood what he meant. If the headmaster knew that Ninkei was the son of Yama and accepted him as his disciple, then even if the whole world wanted to kill Ninkei, the headmaster would stand on Ninkei's side. But the headmaster did not know. Because Buddha had said that there was no omniscient person in this world. Baoshu said, "I want to know what you saw him do on the Buddha's chessboard." After a moment of silence, Master Chishan said, "I saw a black horse carriage blocking the way." Bushu asked again, "Where is the Lady of Light?" "She is waiting on the mountain," Master Chishan said. For some reason, he did not tell Bushu about what Sang Sang had experienced in the chessboard world. Bushu sat on the futon and kept silent for a long time. The oil lamp on the cliff wall felt a little uneasy because of the night breeze. Bushu suddenly said, "This morning, at the foot of the mountain, when Ninkei was about to shoot, I felt a great sense of danger. The bell rang but did not ring. There seems to be something strange about him." Master Chishan said calmly, "He has the aura of junior brother Lotus." Hearing Lotus' name, Bushu's Dhyana heart was disturbed. He raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "He is a disciple of the academy. How can he have the aura of Uncle Lotus?" Although he came from the unknown place and was the president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple, he could not help but be shocked by the name of Lotus. After all, Lotus had studied Buddhism, Taoism and the Devil's Doctrine. He had a legendary life and had a high reputation and status in the Xiankong Temple's scripture hall. How could he look down on him? Master Chishan shook his head and said, "Or it has something to do with Mr. Ku?" Bushu gradually calmed down and said firmly, "I am more and more convinced that Ninkei is the son of Yama." Master Chishan shook his head and said, "He is not, although there is no way to prove it." Bushu said, "The son of Yama is about to wake up. Then I am the only one who can prove it." Master Chishan's eyes suddenly became extremely sharp. Although he had been ill for many years and his real cultivation state was very low, his eyes still had the power of thunder. Why does the Xiankong Temple never connect the two worlds like the Academy? Because the Xiankong Temple was originally used by the Buddhism sect to preserve the Buddha's nature in the Dharma ending age. What we want is to be isolated from the world. The unknown place should be unknown. Master Chishan looked at Bushu and said in a low voice, "You are the president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple, not a world wayfarer. You are not allowed to enter the human world without the Buddha's order. Why did you come to the Hua Mountain? Hurry up and leave this place." If it was any other monk in the world, even if it was the master of the Ueluan kingdom or the monk Huangyang from the Tang Empire, they would be very respectful to the president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple, not to mention reprimanding him like this. However, Master Chishan's identity was different. As the rumors said, he was the illegitimate son of the former chief preaching monk of the Xiankong Temple. He had been a monk in the temple since he was a child, so his seniority was extremely high. Besides, he knew what kind of place the Xiankong Temple was, so he did not need to care about the attitude of the Xiankong Temple. As expected, Bushu did not get angry. He said calmly, "I have my reasons. The one who came should be Qinyan, not you. If you did not have a deep connection with the Buddha and the connection with the bell, how could you be the president of the commandment yard with your cultivation state of knowing destiny? In this case, you should be more cautious and not touch the bell. You should not be persuaded by Kuni Mati and come to the human world from the wilderness." Master Chishan looked at him seriously and said, "You are a Buddhist cultivator, so you should understand the cause and effect. You should not be blinded by hatred. Dao Shi died in the hands of Ningquebec. That is his cause and effect." Bushu frowned slightly and then gradually calmed down. He said, "I am the cause of Dao Shi, and Dao Shi is my effect. Since Dao Shi's cause and effect ended with Ninkei, then this is the cause and effect between me and him. I was born in the Pure Land and grew up in it. I walk with the bell and can deter all evil spirits in the world. If Ninkei is the son of Yama, he will hear the bell and wake up. This is also the cause and effect between me and him. I came to the Wa Mountain to understand this cause and effect, and then settle this cause and effect. Master Qishan shook his head slowly and said, "Since you are so obsessed, then I have to inform the chief preaching monk to remove you from your position in the temple and punish you to face the wall for 10 years. Boshu said calmly, "All right, uncle, you know. I did come here on orders." Master Qishan was slightly shocked and frowned for a long time. After a long while, he said tiredly, "Even so, Qin Yen is still the wayfarer of the Buddhism sect. Everything in the world is based on his will. I will persuade my younger brother." Boshu stood up, put his palms together and bowed, then left the cave. The cliff cave was quiet. Master Qishan, who was more than 100 years old, felt the strongest uneasiness in his long life today. It was even more than decades ago when the Devil's Doctrine massacred the front yard of the Lank Temple. The door creaked. Monk Guanhai had returned. "Master, Mr. 13 and the Lady of Light are resting in the front temple." Master Qishan looked at his disciple and suddenly asked, "The Yulan Hungry Ghost Festival is about to begin. They will still discuss the underworld invasion. What do you think of this?" Monk Guanhai looked at his master's haggard face and wanted him to rest early. He said, "No one knows where the underworld is. It is only a legend." Master Qishan smiled and said, "Idiot, if a legend becomes a reality, then it is no longer a legend." Monk Guanhai smiled honestly and said, "Then let's talk about it when it becomes a reality." Master Qishan asked again, "What do you know about the Xiankong Temple?" Monk Guanhai was slightly startled. He found that his master seemed to be a little strange today. He said, "You have never allowed me to ask about the Xiankong Temple and other unknown places. You have been the abbot of the Lank Temple for 20 years, or rather, lived in seclusion for some years. One day you will go to the Xiankong Temple, so it is okay to know something in advance." Master Qishan said, "The origin of the Xiankong Temple is actually closely related to the legend of the underworld invasion. The underworld invasion is called the Everlasting Night. In Buddhism, it is called the Dharma Ending Age. At that time, everything in the world will be destroyed." Buddha saw the terrible scene many years later. He thought hard for hundreds of years, thinking about how to solve this problem, but he still could not think of a way. Buddha sensed the time of his parinirvana and found a pure land in the depths of the western wilderness. He made a great vow to build a temple and gave it an eternal barrier. Buddha collected Buddhism and Zen scriptures in it. He ordered the outstanding disciples of the younger generation to enter the temple to listen to the scriptures and cultivate. This is the Xiankong Temple. The reason is that after countless years of thinking, Buddha still could not think of a way to stop the Dharma Ending Age. This is originally the cause and effect of the world. There must be death when there is life, and even until the painful reincarnation of thousands of generations. Therefore, he hoped that the future generation of Buddhist disciples could use the protection of the Xiankong Temple to survive the torrent of destruction in the Dharma Ending Age. They could help the monks in the temple to endure the long, almost eternal night and wait for the arrival of the new world with perseverance and patience. After a long silence, Master Qishan sighed softly and said, "However, today's Buddhism sect seems to have forgotten the teachings of Buddha. They no longer think that way. Last year, Qin Yen entered Chang'an City, and this time, Baoshu entered the human realm and came to the Wa Mountain. It all proves that they want to find the son of Yama and kill him. Master, I think, the Vedantas of the Xiankong Temple did a good job." Although Monk Guanhai had been cultivating Buddhism for many years, he was still young. Thinking of the horrible scene of the underworld invasion, he said in a low voice, All living beings have suffered so much. We should be merciful and help them. How can we only be kind to ourselves? Master Chishan laughed and said, Child, your way of thinking is really simple. Guan Hai smiled embarrassedly. Suddenly, he thought of something and said in shock, Master Baoshu came for the son of Yama. Is the son of Yama in the Hua mountain? Master Chishan smiled and patted his shoulder without saying anything. He thought that there were many ways to let the son of Yama leave this world, and killing him was not the only way. Since the headmaster said in the letter that this method was feasible, then it must be feasible. Whether it was for saving all living beings or for the cause and effect between him and the Xiankong Temple, he had to try. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 572. Ning Ke woke up before the sun rose. He opened his eyes and looked at the spiders weaving webs on the beams of the meditation room. He was silent for a long time. It was a good thing that Sang Sang might be cured. However, he felt that it was not that simple. The 3 games of chess on Hua Mountain, especially the illusion he and Sang Sang saw in the chessboard, made him wary of the Buddhist chariot. What alarmed him the most was the Buddhist chariot. He could not understand why the Xiankong Temple, an unknown place that rarely stepped into the mortal world, would suddenly send such a bigwig to Hua Mountain. The cultivators came to attend the Yulan Hungry Ghost Festival and did not leave after last night. Cuny Madi and the others, as well as the president of the commandment yard of the Xiankong Temple, were resting in the Lank Temple. Ning Ke decided to keep a distance from these people, especially the high monk of the Xiankong Temple, before Sang Sang was cured. His dangerous hunting life in Min Mountain had made him develop an instinctive habit. If you could not determine where the danger was in the forest, it was the best choice not to enter the forest. Faint footsteps came from outside the meditation room. Ning Ke looked at Sang Sang, who was sleeping soundly. He got up, put on his clothes, and quietly walked out of the meditation room. At this time, the morning light was gradually rising. The ancient temple looked exceptionally beautiful in the autumn fog. Master Chishan, who was wearing a thick cotton coat, stood by the stone railing outside the meditation room. He seemed to be a little afraid of the cold. He looked at the palaces and pagodas and said, I haven't seen it for decades. Nothing has changed. The high monk of the Buddhism sect had lived in seclusion on Hua Mountain for half his life. He had not left the mountain for decades, especially after the bloody conspiracy of Lotus. At this moment, seeing the familiar and strange temple, he could not help but sigh. Ning Ke walked to the master and looked at the front hall that was faintly discernible in the autumn fog. He said, Sang Sang spent at least decades in that chessboard yesterday. Although she did not say it, I know it was very painful. Master Chishan said, She is not an ordinary person, so it will not be as painful as you think. Ning Ke asked, Was that chessboard really left by Buddha? What did the world that Sang Sang and I saw on the chessboard yesterday mean? Master Chishan said, The chessboard is indeed a relic of the Buddha. As for the world in the chessboard, you can understand it as an illusion created by the Buddha's supreme power, or a possible future. Hearing the word future, Ning Ke was silent for a long time and asked, Is that the future of Sang Sang and me? Master Chishan looked into the distance in the fog and said, The future that can be seen is no longer the future. Ning Ke asked, Is it possible to change the future? Master Chishan looked into Ning Ke's eyes and said kindly, Since it is a possible future, then there is a corresponding impossibility. Since it has never been confirmed, why can't it be changed? Ning Ke seemed to understand something and said, Master, it is said that you have the ability to predict the future, so you can guide people to turn misfortunes into blessings and solve their doubts. Does this ability come from that chessboard? Master Chishan laughed and said, Buddha may be able to see what will happen many years later, but how can a mortal like me have such an ability? And even if you have this ability like Buddha, When you see the future, your gaze will fall on the future, and the future will be affected by your gaze. Then, how can the future that you haven't seen be exactly the same as the future that you have seen? Ninkei said, "It sounds a bit complicated." Master Chishan did not give any further explanation. He continued, "So if someone wants to predict the mysteries of heaven and see the future, such as Li Qingshan, the nation master of the Tang Empire, or me, who used to be ignorant and fearless, or the great divine priest of revelation, they can only look at the chaotic world in the future from a distance in fear. Because that is the only way that the illusory gazes of mortals like us will not affect the big chaotic world too much, but will be swallowed up by the chaotic world in the future." Master Chishan sighed and said, "But if we try to see the world in the future more carefully and clearly, not only will the future we see become more false, but we will also suffer more from the wrath of heaven. I heard that the great divine priest of revelation went to Chang last spring and took a look at Sang Sang in the old brush pen shop. He saw that she would return to the West Hill Divine Palace in 3 years. He was almost blinded by this." Ning Kei was slightly stunned. It was not until today that he knew that the great divine priest of revelation had tried to see Song Song's future in the old brush pen shop, and had paid such a heavy price. No wonder the great divine priest of revelation agreed to my 3-year promise. He suddenly thought of something and frowned. Although the future he saw might not be the real future, the great divine priest of revelation spent so much effort to confirm that Sang Sang would appear in the West Hill Divine Palace in 3 years. So he couldn't have been wrong about this. Master Chishan sighed and said, "Because of some reasons, I have some doubts about the future he saw. But as you said, I have to believe what he saw. So I am very confused. What kind of future could the great divine priest of revelation and Master Chishan not see through? Where would Song Song's future be, and what would it be like?" Ning Kei patted the railing in front of him and looked at the heavy autumn fog in front of the temple. He said, "I still don't understand. Looking into the future was to pry into the mysteries of heaven. Not to mention him, even the great divine priest of revelation, Master Chishan, and the nation master Li Qingshan, who were famous for being able to foresee the future, did not dare to say that they could understand the truth. But it did not matter to Ning Kei whether he understood or not. Since the great divine priest of revelation had confirmed that Sang Sang would appear in the West Hill in 3 years, it meant that her illness could be cured. As long as Sang Sang was still alive, any future could be accepted. The morning bell in the autumn temple rang. After a simple breakfast, the monks in the Lank temple began their morning classes. Sang Sang, who was a little sleepy because of her illness, was also carried out of bed by Ning Kei and the class began. Song Song's classroom was the back hall in the depths of the Lank temple. It was too much to use such a majestic golden palace as a classroom for a single person. Other than the special status of Ning Kei and Sang Sang, the Lank temple gave them such treatment because Master Chishan, who taught Sang Sang Dharma, was the ancestor of this ancient temple. Master Chishan said casually, and even if he wanted to empty the entire Lank temple, not to mention the back hall, the monks in the Lank temple would not dare to have any objections. The monks in the back hall of the Lank temple had already received strict orders to not step into the hall. Other than a few monks of high seniority waiting outside the hall to do chores, there was no one inside or outside the hall. It was extremely quiet. Master Chishan's calm and wise voice could be heard from time to time in the hall. Song Song's voice was not heard. She was just listening carefully and learning. In the corridor outside the hall, Ning Kei looked at the gradually dispersing autumn fog and listened to the essence of Dharma behind him. He was calm. Master Chishan did not say that he could not listen with them, but he was a disciple of the academy after all. Last night in the cave, it could be said that it was an urgent matter. Since today was the official start of the lesson, it would be too inappropriate for him to listen to the teachings of the Buddhism sect that were not taught to outsiders. Moreover, because of second brother, He had no interest in Dharma. Time passed slowly, and the Dharma lesson in the hall temporarily came to an end. Sangsang sat on the futon and tried to meditate with her eyes closed. At the same time, she recalled the contents of the morning class. Master Qishan walked out of the hall. It was almost noon, but the autumn clouds covered the sky. The sky was dark, and occasionally there would be a few drops of cold rain. The temperature outside the hall was a little low, and the master coughed a few times because of the chill. Ning Ke gave the master a cup of hot tea to warm his chest and abdomen. Master Qishan took a sip of the hot tea and put the teacup on the steps in front of him. He looked at Ning Ke with a smile and said, "Your attitude towards me is better than others. Your attitude today is better than last night." Ning Ke laughed and said, "I am a very realistic person, and even a little snobbish. I hope you don't mind." The master shook his head with a smile and said, "Sometimes, honesty does not necessarily change people's impression of you. However, I believe that before you became a disciple of the headmaster, you were also realistic, but you were definitely more careful than you are now." Ning Ke said, "It was not until I entered the wilderness and found that the waste token of the second floor of the academy could scare so many people that I realized that I could live a life that was not so careful." Master Qishan nodded and said, "With the headmaster behind you, there is indeed no one in this world who is qualified to let you live like before." Ning Ke said, "Sometimes I also wonder if I am too arrogant." The master said, "Another way of saying arrogance is to be quick to repay kindness and hatred. Evaluation has nothing to do with means. Although you were tough at the foot of the mountain yesterday, compared to Mr. Ku, you were as honest as a rabbit." Ning Ke said, "I don't want to be the second youngest uncle, so I still think that bullying the weak and fearing the strong is more interesting than fighting the world alone." Master Qishan looked at him and said pitifully, "I know that you had a hard childhood and even encountered the most difficult things in the world. That is why you have developed your current temperament. However, since you have entered the academy, you have the headmaster's teachings and the companionship of your peers. You should change." After a moment of silence, Ning Ke said, "The academy has changed me a lot. I like this change, so I am grateful to the academy. But it will be a long process." Master Qishan said kindly, "I may not be able to see what kind of person you will become in the end, but I look forward to it." Ning Ke was slightly moved and asked, "Master, what kind of person do you want me to be the most?" Master Qishan did not answer his question directly. His sad and sorrowful gaze passed through the rain and landed on the square in front of the Lank Temple. Decades ago, junior brother Lotus massacred Lank. It was there that he ate a human for the first time. This is the first chapter. I can still write. Although it is hard, please don't wait. The next chapter will probably be written in the wee hours of the morning. I am really tired. Please sleep first. I will continue to write. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.